Chapter 31 Destiny Calls. My mind was made up. I would go and face the unusual greater demon in the field. I was afraid, terrified in fact, but running away now would mean throwing away the lives of billions of people without trying something first. I could never live with myself with that, especially since SYRINE might be the only one who could do something about it. Earlier, when it was but 1,000,000 lives at stake, that pressure had already caused me a great deal of distress. I was sure my fragile psyche had no way of surviving 1,000 more times worth of guilt. Before I even started walking, my heroic venture was already hitting obstacles as Sister Verita and Sister Wellmana had ganged up to block my path while Kira looked on from the side. "Lady SYRINE, where are you going?" "To the front line." "Why?" "It is not safe out there." "Nowhere is safe now. There has been an unusual warp breach. A greater demon of unknown nature now walks on this world. Inquisitor Thorn has already ordered the preparation for an exterminatus if we cannot stop it soon." Exterminatus, the subject of many memes, was the ultimate flexing action ordered by the highest authorities of the Imperium of Man to destroy a planet's biosphere and all life upon it. It was scorched earth tactics scaled up to a planetary level. Both sisters turned deathly pale at my statement. I pushed past them, walking towards an open field while using my authority to establish a priority vox call to the Inquisitor himself via Cryptorer's skull probe. After some tries, it connected and I put it in speaker format so both sisters could hear the important conversation. "Inquisitor. SYRINE? Thank the throne you are up. There has been an unfortunate development. I know about the warp breach and your preparation for the exterminatus. There is no hiding anything from you, is it?" He sighed. "Keep that as a last resort. I will be heading to the field and see what I can do about it." "Very well. Do you have a way to stop it?" For some reason, he sounded very calm and cold. It was then I remembered who I was speaking to. Is he already thinking of how to silence the masses if I am able to clean up this mess? Realizing what might be coming even after so much effort was put into saving lives made me furious inside. We had not come this far just to put up with this bullshit doctrine of treating the population like cheap dirt. After taking a deep breath, I answered the question in my calmest voice. "Nothing concrete yet, but promise me you won't do anything rash like silencing all the witnesses to this occurrence like the aftermath of the First Armageddon War." To my knowledge, the First War for Armageddon was a truly titanic clash between the forces of chaos and the defenders of the Imperium of Man, where a demon primarch led a demonic assault on the hive world of Armageddon. The war itself was horrible enough, but its aftermath was arguably far worse. There was an ugly internal conflict when the Inquisition's decision to sterilize the entire surviving population of Armageddon and the Imperial troops that took part in the war, to maintain their policy of secrecy concerning the existence of demonic entities. According to the lore, untold millions died for being bystanders and billions more ended up in the direct crosshairs of fellow Imperials in said conflict. It had stood up as one of the darkest episodes of Imperial cover-ups gone wrong. I did not know if that sort of merciless standard operating procedure was something Thaberus would subscribe to, but it might not be far off. There has to be another solution to this than the usual methods the Inquisition employs. Going forward, this might become more and more common, and we can't just start killing everyone every time one of these things comes through. I pushed with my valid reasons. "I agree with you on that statement." He relented. "While I understand we do not have the resources to screen thousands of troops for warp taint, I will look for a solution if we get through this. So promise me you will not enact mass killings to silence witnesses of this incident while I am alive." "Fair enough, I promise." "Will you swear to that in the name of my father?" "Very well. I swear to the God Emperor that I will not silence the witnesses to this conflict while you live." "Thank you. I will be going now." Just as I cut the vox call, my mind registered 3 Mechanicus flyers approaching fast. "My ride's here." I turned to the sisters. They both looked as pale as ghosts after hearing the grim developments. I'm coming with you." Wellmana blurted out. "Me too." Verita followed. "Are both of you serious?" "I am heading to where a greater demon is rampaging." "Lady SYRINE." Wellmana protested with teary eyes. "Please think about the tirade of condemnations Canonist Dina will be leveling at me should I leave you alone in this junction. Likewise, I will be accompanying you to the front line as my meager skill set might be called upon to serve." Verita insisted. "Your security is my primary objective. I will follow you regardless of your destination." Kira added. It looked like there was no way I could shake them all here, so I laid down my condition. "Very well. You may follow, but once we reach the front line, you two need to stay away from direct action." A wing of Mechanicus flyers appeared and approached us, An Archaeopter Transector fast transport escorted by 2 Stratoraptors, its gunship variant. With their unique shape, it looked as if we were being approached by 3 colossal dragonflies with wings resembling that of a bat. Once the flyers got close enough, they engaged hover mode, causing a huge downward draft that made our clothes flutter furiously as the transport landed in front of us. I stepped forward, but Kira was way ahead of me. She opened the side door and ushered us inside. Once we got into the Transvector, I noted its interior was a far cry from that of the Flame Raven, smelling like a car workshop with cold, austere-looking seats aimed for maximum efficiency. This aircraft was a workhorse model for the Mechanicus after all. The concept of travel comforts might not even exist in its design. At the front of the flyer was the pilot, who looked to be a heavily augmented human. As I moved closer to relay my instructions, to my shock I realized his lower body and mechanical legs seemed to be fused with the aircraft itself. Oh yeah, this was mentioned in the lore, but to see it in real life was unnerving. The pilot must be a Taraxii. The Taraxii looked at me with his cold goggle eyes. He seemed to be confused and said in a flat voice, "Mechanicus personnel only." Kira appeared beside me, brandishing a shiny opus machina like a sheriff showing off a badge. "Overruled. I am Scutarii Alpha Kira Heptrix. This operation falls under Dominus Cycle's directive. You will comply." Cryptorer's skull probe flew over and cannoned some binary verification code. Complying. The Taraxii nodded and off we went. We settled down inside on the cold, metallic seats as the Transvector steadily gained speed. I then made a priority vox call to the canonist through the skull probe that connected quickly. "Diadina. Lady SYRINE. I am so glad to hear you are fine," receiving loud and clear. "Please listen carefully. Despite the measures we had taken, a true enemy has appeared. Inquisitor Thorn had warned us of a serious warp incursion, and he is currently chasing it down. It has taken the form of a huge winged humanoid, carrying a gigantic axe, and is currently heading towards your direction as we speak. I am coming over to fetch the nameless sword, and I need you to prepare a few things for me. A fast rhino, a capable driver." After dropping my instructions, I ended the Vox call and switched on the composite picked feed from various sources chasing the demon. I saw it rampaging towards the heart of the battle, sometimes stopping to unleash its terrifying rage at the unfortunate retreating rebels that got in its way, flipping tanks and cutting people down as it saw fit. I watched the live stream intently, wanting to learn its pattern of attack and weakness. So far, one glaring weakness seemed to be that this thing was limited to only melee attacks. Granted, almost everything it touched instantly got destroyed. Even Lehman Russ battle tanks were little more than speed bumps as it rampaged forward. The greater demon seemed so awkwardly out of place in a battlefield brimming with guns and cannons it was almost laughable, but so far it did not even look bothered by the returning fire. It seemed to be enjoying the atmosphere of the war, striding purposely forward into a whole armored formation, completely impervious to small arms fire and large-caliber guns. Wellmana approached me timidly and asked, "My lady, pardon me, but you mentioned a greater demon is on the loose? Surely an issue like that is better left to the army to deal with." Her question almost made me want to hug her and cry out loud, how I wish it to be the case. Instead, I suppressed my emotion and turned to Verita. "Let me show you. Verita, please lend me your data slate." The Hospitaller obediently passed her inquisitorial data slate over. After some tweaking with my ability, I successfully streamed the picked feed of the demon as it was doing another round of frenzied butchering on the rebel troops. "This is happening now," I said and passed the data slate to them. Both sisters watched what was happening on screen with horror as the relentless one-sided slaughter continued. Muffled death screams filled the cabin of the Transector. Both Wellmana and Verita looked shaken after witnessing what a greater demon could do in this world. Even the stoic Kira looked like she was uncomfortable after sneaking a few peeks at the data slate. After a while, I concluded nothing more could be learned and turned off the feed. "Best not look at it too much," I said. "Might taint your soul." Corruption of one's soul and body by exposure to anything related to demons or the Imperium is a thing in this universe. While the Sororitas are famed for their resistance to such influence, the risk was still best kept at a minimum. "Are you going to fight that thing? You just recovered from a fainting spell," asked Wellmana worriedly. They both looked terrified. So am I inside. But letting pretty ladies down was still something I instinctively wanted to avoid, so some bravado was needed again. I put up a brave face again and smiled to reassure them. "Don't mind me. I might not look like one, but I am still a Primarch." Their faces lightened up with my bold statement just as I lamented SYRINE had no legion of super soldiers under her command and finished my statement weakly. "Minori's." A Primarch? Minories? Wellmana quickly made a note of it. Now that she mentioned it, it made me realize I had never mentioned that term to anyone after seeing that vision. Yes, I answered while holding up my right hand then connecting my index finger and thumb together. A tiny Primarch, but Primarch nonetheless. The blood of the Emperor flows in me. By his will, I will find a way, or this world will end. At the back of my mind, a sinister plan had been brewing for a while to exploit the demon's weakness. If that premonition of mine was correct, SYRINE's existence was the main reason why this greater demon came to this world in the first place. Since I am its primary target, a scheme could be set up to bring it down. After all, it is only a melee monster. Let's cheese it to death. SYRINE, here is the compiled requested list. Cryptor's voice sounded in my head as a listing of highly classified weaponry popped into my vision, and I quickly went through it. No idea what is this, not this, definitely not that. Why is this even here? We are trying to kill a demon, not the world itself. Wait, he has this? Crypto, is this? I was still refining my schemes with the Dominus when we arrived at our destination. The transvector soon touched down on a field near to a large concentration of friendly forces. Thank you. I sent my gratitude to the Taraxii pilot via Cryptor's skull probe, and he seemed surprised, turning his head swiftly towards me as if to verify it was no fluke. It might be the first time he received binary communication from what appeared to be an unaugmented human. As I stepped out of my ride, I could not help but notice there were a lot of people waiting for me. Leading the welcoming party was Canoness Diadina herself. Weirdly, Alicia was by her side, but I distinctly recalled she was stationed elsewhere commanding another contingent of sisters. Even Governor Kathalina was here with some of her top generals together with a Skitarii marshal. Its mission done, the transvector took off with another wash of powerful downwards draft. After it left, the sound levels in the area finally returned to a level where people could converse, but it was still noisy as hell. I observed my surroundings and came to the shocking realization that, for the first time in this life, or the last, I was in a real war zone. Under the late afternoon sun, lines upon lines of war machines were everywhere. A Beyblade which I recognized to be Kathalina's command ride was here too. There was this perpetual smell of smoke with a hint of burned gunpowder that filled the air, the constant thrumming of war equipment, be it the tank engines in the distance or the power armor backpacks nearby was inescapable. It sure felt different here compared to my perspective back on the podium. I was still in awe of the intensity of my surroundings when Dinah and the others approached. She knelt down while greeting me, Holy Daughter. Following her example, the rest did the same while we were being observed by a whole field of army personnel. Personally, I just felt like digging up a hole and hiding inside it because of the sheer level of tension I was experiencing from the level of reverence on open display. Please rise, we have urgent matters to discuss and time is short, I said while doing my best to suppress the unbearable level of social anxiety bubbling inside me. With that done, we were soon moving towards a makeshift command tent with tables set up not too far from the landing site. While walking towards the tent, my superhuman level of hearing was soon picking up a lot of hushed but excited chatter, and through my connection to the network, I noticed some random bursts of Vox messages were going around in the area. She's here in the flesh. Is that the singing saint from just now? Wait, what? That hologram was a real person. Come and see. She is here. I still can't get that song out of my head. Singing saint? A song? Wellmana did mention something about a song. Back then I was so fixated on the demon crisis the matter was brushed aside, but now it piqued my interest. Intrigued by the chatters, I continued walking while my mind dove into a few cogitators in the area with records of recent events to see what had really happened. I managed to get hold of some footage of that time and began going through the recordings and... What in the freaking name of Throne? I watched in disbelief as a recording of myself doing a live solo of Beautiful World in the middle of the battlefield streamed in my vision. The level of shocking cringe was too much. I shuddered so hard that it broke my stride. Losing my balance, I almost fell to the ground, but a vigilant Verita who was always one step behind me saved the day by grabbing me. Naturally, this caused another commotion and put the issue of my health into focus again. No, I am fine, really. We need to do this. This world and its people need this. Trying to hide my embarrassment, I was adamant on not delaying the meeting and pushed on. Then I noticed their subtle expressions of concern turned to admiration. By then the misunderstandings had gone down so many layers I gave up on explaining. Let's just get to the matters at hand. Soon another emergency meeting was underway in the makeshift command tent with holographic bust of Cryptor and Thabris joining remotely. The situation was becoming really urgent, so I went straight to the point. Everyone, despite your valiant efforts, our true enemy was more sinister than we anticipated. Inquisitor, could you please brief everyone here on the situation? Thabris' hologram nodded grimly and started speaking. Yes, as mentioned, we arrived only to a ruined stronghold with all the cultists dead on sight. The heretics had been toying with power beyond their control and paid the price for their folly. Unfortunately, there is now a greater demon on the loose and currently heading your way. Pardon me, but are we talking about a single enemy? One of the generals asked. Surely with the amount of troops we have here, we can simply overcome it with sheer firepower? Thabris shook his head. This is an enemy we cannot defeat by simply continuously throwing troops and material at it. My psychers had been monitoring it and found the warp spawn seemed to be gaining strength with each victim killed. Our only hope is to subject it with an overwhelming amount of firepower in a very short span of time to banish it back to the warp, but we must do it quickly before it becomes too powerful. I nodded in agreement and continued, exactly. Earlier during the brief period when I fainted, a revelation came to me about the nature of this greater demon. The mention of a revelation had them all perked up. I then continued to speak and dropped my plan. For reasons unknown, its arrival appears to have something to do with me being its primary target. I will act as the bait. If the revelation turns out to be true, we can probably bring it down before it becomes unstoppable. The statement brought out a round of murmurs, and the sisters objected to the plan out of concern for my safety, but I vetoed them since no better option was on the table and everything was on the line. What if it does not take the bait? Kathalina asked. Then we will throw everything we have at it, but with a much lower chance of success. If that fails, I will have no choice but to enact exterminatus on Nusquam as the planet, and its assets cannot be allowed to fall into the possession of the great enemy. Thabris replied to the petrified Nusquamese present. That settled, I turned to Cryptor's hologram. Crypto, can the special weapon be ready in time? The Dominus bowed and replied, it is in the process of being prepared and will be ready for deployment soon. Good, please make haste. I then turned to the Canoness, Diadina. How are my requests coming along on your end? Diadina bowed, put her hand on Alicia's shoulder and replied, they're all ready. Your driver is here. I summoned her after receiving your directive, and she drove over quickly. Alicia? I was surprised. Yes, she is one of the highest record holders for tactical driving in our order after all. Diadina said, and Alicia nodded to me with confidence. The mental image of a delinquent-looking Alicia drifting with a rhino tank appeared in my mind, almost making me laugh out loud as it seemed so far off from the Palatine I knew. Suddenly a light rain started to drizzle and everyone present looked up with a frown, but I felt my skin start to crawl with goosebumps. This is no natural rain. I looked to the sky and felt a suffocating presence in the air. It was as if the world itself was weeping and crying out for help. Ready or not, we need to engage the greater demon before it is too late. Chapter 32: The Duel. If this was a game, it felt like the final boss fight of this war was looming. A light rain with the taste of doomsday heralded the duel. I turned to the Canoness, Diadina. The relic sword, please. She nodded and gestured towards a battle sister nearby who was holding the large blade. The sister approached, knelt down, and handed the nameless sword to me. I received the sword and thanked the sister before realizing she was not Celestian superior Markila who was by the Canoness' side. Had Markila fallen in battle? It was hard to imagine such a fate had befallen to her. Curious, I asked around, where is Sister Markila? It was then I heard from Diadina the most ridiculous story ever since coming to this universe. While I was out cold, there was a standoff between our forces and the last group of rebels who had not yet surrendered. It was none other than Luther who was the leader of that die-hard group. Diadina had a talk with Luther via Vox communication. During the talk, the Lord General had demanded us to redeem our honor for using underhanded tactics and subterfuge to undermine his honest approach to war. In short, he was throwing temper tantrums and demanded a trial by combat as some sort of last resort to salvage his honor, the condition being we would send our best fighter to face his best in a one-on-one combat. If his side won, he would quietly surrender with the rest of his troops. If our side won, he would apologize to us first and then surrender with the rest of his troops. Should we refuse, he threatened to gather anyone who would follow him for a glorious final charge to redeem his honor as a soldier of the Imperium. Luther had figured out we wanted to keep as many people alive as possible, so he was pushing it. To top it off, he had touched everyone's nerves by calling me names like that singing whore during their conversation. It was clearly a taunt, but it worked. That insult did not go unanswered, and soon Markila requested to be the one to represent us. Cryptor had complained about the whole demand being totally illogical but saw its merits of avoiding complications. To his logic, if Luther had kept to his word he would be surrendering either way. Risking the life of a sister seemed totally worth it. Since Markila was expressing her eagerness for the duel anyway, he approved it. That was half an hour ago. So in the middle of the battlefield now was a big bunch of people gathering around to watch a one-on-one duel. Meanwhile, moments earlier at the duel site, after the rules for the fight had been agreed by both sides, Celestian Superior Markila watched with her arms crossed as a Chimera armored transport came forth. It took a sharp turn, had its rear end facing towards her, and stopped. The Chimera's rear hatch then opened and a figure too big even for an Astartes slowly stepped out. The rebel troops cheered as the figure's immense muscles flexed after escaping the confines of his ride. Under the late afternoon sun, the best fighter for the rebels, an abhuman Ogren standing close to 3 meters tall, yawned as he scratched his belly lazily while holding a club the size of a man. Custom armor covered the Ogren's body and a fierce-looking half-mask covered his face. Markila raised an eyebrow. This would certainly make the duel interesting. The sister had heard about a misplaced Ogren who got adopted by a general some time ago, but this was the place she had least expected to encounter the abhuman. If she recalled correctly, the said Ogren also had a very simple name, and in the very next moment Luther confirmed her memory. Boy. Papa. How many things do I have to tell you? Call me father. Boy. Yes, Papa. Never mind. See that lady over there? Yes. Smash her, and you will get extra portions of food tonight. Okay. The Ogren stepped forward, readied his club, and declared, Boy no like fight lady, but boy like food. Markila readied herself, and the duel began. Boy stepped forward swinging his club. Any connection with that weapon would have immediately ended the fight, but his actions were too obvious and the sister dodged them all. Markila tried to take advantage of Boy's openings between each swing by sneaking in some swift attacks with her power sword. To her surprise, while the Ogren looked clumsy, he was a natural fighter. All her attacks were either blocked, parried, or deflected in unconventional ways more suited to a bar brawler than a duelist. The Ogren's raw power was immense while Markila was a lot more skilled and aided by her power armor. As the duel continued, it looked like a stalemate would be inevitable. While the two exchanged more blows, the spectating rebel troops cheered thunderously while the other Celestians accompanying Markila remained silent. The fight dragged on until a light drizzle began. By then Markila was close to exhaustion and Boy had accumulated a number of wounds around his body. Both fighters knew the fight was drawing to a close, and then the Ogren spoke. Lady hard, Boy still get food. Markila wanted to laugh. The Ogren's simple approach to life was refreshing. She replied, You will have to defeat me first, Boy. Boy beat hard lady. Come and try it. Just as the duel was about to enter its final phase, a pair of flyers flew side by side over in high speed. Anuntius Haler together with an Imagifier. The fight halted. Markila watched in surprise as a huge hologram of SYRINE was seen underneath one of the flyers while a deafening announcement came from the other. People, you need to evacuate this site immediately. This is not a drill. I repeat, evacuate immediately. Go towards the governor's forces now for your own safety. The huge crowd seemed stunned by the sudden development and watched on as the flyers went around the field repeating the message. A skull probe that was sent by Cryptor to accompany the sisters suddenly became active. It flew over, stopped in front of Luther, and started communicating. Lord General, the true enemy has appeared and is coming your way. I am calling off the duel. Get your people evacuated immediately. What are you even talking about? Can't a dead man claim his honor in peace? Meanwhile, back in the duel ring, the Ogren had stopped moving. Sky Lady. Boy murmured while looking at SYRINE's hologram with a stupefied expression on his exposed face. Sky Lady? Markila was confused until she realized the Ogren had associated SYRINE to the big holograms in the sky. Ogren, she asked, you heard the Sky Lady singing? Yes. World, beautiful. Boy, beautiful. The Ogren replied, and to the sister's astonishment, he actually started weeping a little. Boy, do you like Sky Lady? Markila asked tentatively. Like? Boy thought for a while before deciding his answer. No like. Markila's expression darkened upon hearing that and prepared to continue the fight. Like, no enough. Huh. Boy. Love. Sky Lady. The Origin struggled with his vocabulary. The absurdity of it all was heard by some troopers present, and a few chuckles broke out despite the tense situation. Markila could not help but smile at Boy's statement and involuntarily relax her stance. Boy, I have met the Sky Lady. She is our holy daughter. Her name is SYRINE. Sky Lady SYRINE. Hard Lady. No Sky Lady. Boy contemplated for a while before declaring, we no fight. Their inaction finally caught Luther's attention, and he was not pleased. What are you doing, boy? Finish the fight. Boy no fight, Sky Lady. Want no fight. Why, you little, how dare you disobey my order? I am your father. Finish the fight. Enraged, the general stepped forward and pulled out his Lost pistol. No. That's an order. Luther pointed his weapon at the Origin. Livid at a blatant disobedience of his authority on possibly the worst day of his life, Luther finally lost it. The sounds of Lost pistol being fired rang out as the Lord General shot Boy a few times. The crowd gasped. Markila furrowed her brow while the Origin flinched but stood still. I said fight. No. Fine. I will do it myself, declared General Luther as he pointed his Lost pistol at Markila and fired. A veteran of many battles, Markila was already bracing for the familiar impacts of Lost bolt, but it never came. A huge mass had intercepted that bolt. Boy had stepped in to shield her and added another wound to his tattered body. Get out of the way, Boy. His anger completely boiling over, Luther pointed his Lost pistol at Boy, and this time the people around them started screaming and running away. Luther watched in surprise as all the hardened soldiers he had known for years were all suddenly acting like frightened children. He looked back at Boy and the sister again, suddenly realizing they were no longer even looking at him. Their sights focused upwards and both had horrified expressions. It was then Luther realized a huge shadow was cast over him, and the raindrops had stopped falling on him. All the hair on his arms were raised on their end. Fear, crippling mortal fear, had suddenly enveloped the Lord General, but he forced himself to turn around and came face to face with the very definition of a nightmare. Standing right behind Luther was a black-skinned humanoid towering more than 3 stories in height. It had powerful but twisted-looking muscles covering every inch of its body. Long curved horns rose proudly from its inhuman head that held an expression of perpetual agony and anger. A pair of colossal bat-like wings extended from its back, so vast that the wings had completely blocked out the rain for the Lord General. A pair of huge, ember orbs shone from where the creature's eyes would be, staring straight down at Luther, piercing his soul. Weird as it sounded, but in his last moments Luther found his mind flooded with seemingly stupid questions. What is this thing? Why is it so big but so quiet? And why is my life flashing before me? But Luther knew. He knew what stood before him was a demon. He knew no mercy would be coming, and he knew his place as a soldier of the Imperium, so he pointed his Lost pistol at the thing, shouting, "For the EMP." Lord General Luther von Norden was no more. Even standing so close, Markila could not see how it happened. There was simply a blur of motion followed by a harsh splattering sound, and where the Lord General once stood was but a puddle of blood and gore. Even in her shock, years of harsh battle discipline had Markila automatically revert back to her fighting stance again. It was only then she noticed the demon was carrying a double-bladed axe of enormous proportions, and Boy was already charging towards the warp spawn. Papaya. The Ogre bellowed as he thundered forward in the rain, but the demonic axe became a blur again, and this time Markila could just barely see it. She saw the axe move through Boy as if he was not even there, cleaving the bulky Ogre in the blink of an eye and splattering his remains to the rain with an after flick of its axe. Witnessing the tough opponent which Markila had struggled against last and not even a second against this warp spawn. Even with all her mental fortitude, the Celestian superior had to admit this fight was looking hopeless. Then the realization that she had lost her resolve in the face of a true enemy shocked her even more, paralyzing the sister. Before she knew it, the demon was in front of her, and the axe in its hand became a blur again. Markila watched with silent acceptance as an axe the length of a full rhino tank came at her at an astonishing speed. She had wanted to react, but her instincts told her it was futile. We need to end this uprising with minimal casualties as soon as possible and be prepared for the real incoming crisis. Somehow at this very critical moment, SYRINE's words had come back to her. Facing the end, Markila found herself regretting having to go now. We have just met, holy daughter. The tortured piece of warped metal heavy with the stench of blood came bearing down on her. The world itself seemed to have stopped as Markila waited for the inevitable impact. She waited for her demise, then waited some more. That impact never came. The blur that should have been her end had materialized back into a great axe with its tip halted right in front of her. The sister blinked, confirming what she was seeing by the raindrops mixing with blood dripping down from the colossal weapon. Tentatively, Markila looked up at her opponent and found the latter was not even looking at her, She no longer held the towering demon's slightest attention. It was staring in a direction far behind the sister, its ember eyes simmering with cold fury as it tried to ascertain something important. Tracing to where the greater demon was staring at, Markila turned and could not believe her eyes. Far off in the distance, at the forefront of the Imperial forces was a Sororitas Rhino tank. Within its open top hatch was a figure shining brightly with holy radiance, a golden halo on her head. In the sky above the Rhino was a gigantic hologram of the said figure amplifying her saintly presence to an exaggerated height. SYRINE had arrived in her full glory. Markila gasped with a mixture of horror and relief as the Holy Daughter pointed her sword at the greater demon, the blade next illuminated with a brilliant blue flame as she did so in a wordless challenge. The greater demon sensed the taunting of its nemesis and slowly withdrew its axe that was mere inches away from Markila's face. Its true target had appeared. Here was the mortal enemy of its immortal existence, the source of displeasure of its main essence, the anathema to its kind, the very reason why it was sent here. Challenge accepted. It was at this point the people around Markila, starting from the sisters who had accompanied her, finally started shooting at the demon, and multiple impacts of small arms fire began to flash all over its massive body. It did not even care to notice them. As of this moment, nothing else mattered to it but the destruction of its nemesis. Compelled by instinct, the demon let out a deafening roar that shook the heavens. It then extended its colossal leathery wings and dove towards its quarry with the fury of a world-ending meteor. A showdown that would decide the fate of the planet was about to begin. Chapter 33 Showdown. I fucked up. A scene similar to a certain classic dinosaur movie with the Tyrannosaurus Rex chasing a car was happening, with me swapping in as one of the hapless main characters, and the T-Rex being swapped with a winged greater demon carrying a colossal axe. It seemed like a good idea at the time, exploiting the demon's glaring weakness of having no ranged attacks so we could do the classic tactic of kiting it to death. What was not expected was how fast the damn thing could move and its seeming imperviousness to most ballistics weapons. It was terrifying to see how fast it responded to my flaming sword. It came straight at me like a giant moth to light. In my active psychic state, I could perceive a part of its true nature. It was more than a huge winged humanoid with a colossal axe. Its very existence had warped the nature of reality around it. This thing does not belong here. Alicia was doing a great job of pushing the Rhino to its limits in the rain, and we went on a pre-planned route that would go around the battlefield in an endless loop while the army could freely shoot at the kite demon. The true enemy is here. Show it no mercy. I sent my desperate order through all the general communication networks, and the army responded. The Imperials were soon unleashing a hailstorm of fire at the unholy thing, lighting it up in a glorious display of firepower with flashing tracers and lost beams appearing all over the field, all drawing a line to the massive winged demon. But that seemed to only make it angrier as it roared in protest and persisted in chasing me down, determined to end me above all else. Shoot that thing. Don't hit the Rhino. Avoid hitting the leading Rhino at all cost, I repeat. Connected to the communication network, I was informed of the commander's frantic orders in the air. Blam! Blam! Kira was discharging her galvanic rifle beside me, and both her shots landed squarely in the demon's eye, a testament to her great marksmanship, but the impacts didn't even make it flinch. I watched with great distress as the distance between me and the thing steadily got shorter and shorter. The rain, the smoke, and the horrendous sound of a huge amount of weapons being fired made for a hellish scene. In the chaos of it all, an unfortunate Chimera armored transport ventured too close to the demon, and it swatted the light tank off with a swing of its colossal axe, sending it flying and landed on its top in the distance, buying me a grand total of 2 more seconds of distance. RIP unknown Chimera driver and crew. We need better and more accurate firepower. Just as that thought entered my mind, I was suddenly aware of a familiar machine spirit entering my sphere of influence. Gunship Flame Raven had arrived. The massive inquisitorial gunship appeared on a low pass from nowhere, flying straight at us before unleashing all its payload at the massive demon chasing right behind my ride. The thunderous discharging of its many heavy weapons made me wince. Beams of concentrated las cannons, superheated multi-meltas, and streams of bolt rounds laced with a tint of silverish blue light burst off from my flying savior, accurately hitting the massive winged demon. The sheer impact of it made the monstrous creature stumble. Even in my odd state, I noticed the bolt rounds seemed to be laced with latent psychic energy. Are those the Psy-cannon bolts used by the secretive super-elite Grey Knight demon hunters? So Thabaris had a stash of this precious ammunition in case of such emergency. It howled, the otherworldly cries shaking the air. For the first time, I believed it finally grasped the concept of being hurt. In the blink of an eye, Flame Raven flew past us, its huge backdraft messing up the rhythm of the rain falling over us as it passed. The gunship then went into a steep turn, its two twin heavy bolter sponsons never stopping to fire at the demon locked in its crosshairs. With my psychic senses, I could see the Psy cannon bolts were hurting it in this world and the next, doing the real work. Enraged, it finally took its attention off me to grab a massive rock from the ground and prepared to hurl it at Flame Raven. From my viewpoint, a transcendent level of calculations told me if the rock stayed on course it would hit the gunship's cockpit. This was not some mindless brute throwing object as feeble protest. Malevolent intelligence was guiding its every action. Not about to let that happen, I activated thought acceleration and tapped into Flame Raven's flight control to dip its flight path ever so slightly while dropping a warning in its internal speaker, "Careful, rock." The rock flew in slow motion. I watched with bated breath as it passed within centimeters of its intended target, missing the gunship by a hair's breadth and landed with a massive splatter of dirt in the distance. Flame Raven continued flying unsteadily for a while before picking up speed and hurriedly making its escape, probably with Tasha screaming inside the cockpit. The greater demon seemed to know I had spoiled its plan and turned towards me again, eyes glowing with distilled hatred. Ignoring the endless hail of projectiles hitting it from all sides, it grabbed another massive rock, and this time hurled it straight at me. Luckily, we had already put more distance between us, and my ride was not a flying gunship with a restricted movement path. "Alicia, sharp turn left." The sister complied, and mere seconds later the massive rock landed on our right, creating another massive shower of dirt that was too close for comfort. Can nothing kill this thing? By this time, the greater demon had taken so many shooting attacks. This was beginning to look like a bad trope of a standard monster movie where the kaiju was being impervious to all but some secret weapons. Talking about secret weapons, I was wondering what was holding up Cryptor on my special weapon request. Tapping into the communication network, I sent a direct priority message to him. "Crypto, conventional ballistic weapons are not effective against it at all. We need the Caliban special now to pin it down. The requested weapon is en route for deployment. ETA 5 minutes. I will patch you directly to the weapons control. Please do the work of the Omnicia. Thank the throne." "So you got the weapon ready?" "Affirmative. All rites of activation had been rightly performed. Be advised a Mechanicus strike wing is nearby and should be arriving to aid shortly before the weapon reaches you." I willed my authority to cut through all the technical clutter to get hold of the exact location of the special package, and a highlighted ping appeared in my vision. It was coming fast, but 5 minutes might as well be an eternity when facing this monstrosity. My ride took a steep turn to the left just as another huge object landed where we were moments ago. This time it was the turret of a Lehman Russ battle tank. Luckily, Kira was giving evasive instructions to Alicia while I was busy communicating with the Dominus. It was then the Stratoraptor's strike wing Cryptor mentioned arrived in tight formation and performed a classic low-passing strafing run on the demon, peppering it with an impressive amount of accurate firepower. The monstrous thing roared in protest, threw another piece of wreckage at the 3 aircraft formation, then it spread its wings and took off after them at an impressive speed. Too far to exert my influence on the strike wing, I watched in horror as the wreckage hit 1 aircraft, followed by the demon headbutting into another, obliterating 2 out of 3 Stratoraptors outright. Not done with the carnage, it then flew after the final aircraft, finishing the job with its axe. Why does this thing seem to be getting stronger? Digging through my memory, I recalled some lore that mentioned certain types of demon or demon engines that enjoyed an increase in prowess as their connection with the physical world got weakened. So this thing gained strength both by its act of killing and getting wounded? What kind of imbalance is this? The demon then turned in midair, making a beeline towards me. The sheer pressure it emitted made me shiver. It was done with the playing and wanted to end this fast. Just then, Cryptor's urgent new warning reached me. Priority alert. A Renegade Astartes Thunderhawk gunship armed with a turbo laser destructor has just slipped through our air defense net and is currently heading your way. Turbo laser destructor. Those Titan killers. Just my luck. The Thunderhawk was mounted with one of the most lethal weapons in the Imperial arsenal. My Rhino might as well be made of paper in front of that thing. How did it get through, and what is it doing here? My apologies, these Renegade Marines had employed some of the more advanced stealth features in their gunship setup. Their current objective is still unknown. I am scrambling all available assets, but nothing is close enough to intercept the gunship. Where is it heading? Analyzing. It appears to be coming straight at you by tracing back the priority targeting information you are broadcasting on the demon. Recommend immediate evasive action. I gasped. When it rained, it poured. My calling out to all Imperials to shoot the demon had led to an expected opening. Staying on my ride would render me a sitting duck to the gunship. On the other hand, getting off would mean getting into hand-to-hand combat with a towering greater demon, which I was sure I would not last more than 3 seconds against. Another ping appeared in my vision, highlighting the position of the rapidly approaching super heavy space marine gunship with a big red dot. Its turbo laser's effective range indicator closing in like a death specter while the greater demon closed in from the other side. I fucked up. Talk about being between a rock and a hard place. Am I at the end of the road? From the front, an approaching Thunderhawk gunship armed with a turbo laser, on our back an enraged greater demon flying over. Caught between life and death, time slowed as my thought acceleration activated again without prompt. In my heightened state of awareness, I checked all the data readouts and saw something peculiar. Doubting myself, I double-checked again to confirm the readings. Could this be true? I was trembling with fear inside and forced my logical side to do the cold calculation. If my hunch was proven false, we would be dead anyway. There was no way a space marine gunner would miss its target in the open field with a primary weapon of that caliber. Alicia, do a big 180 turn to the right. I ordered. Lady SYRINE? Kira asked out loud as that would turn us towards the demon, but Alicia had full faith in my order and was already doing the big turning. Stay in the Rhino. Crypto with me. I ordered before climbing the side of the hatch and jumped off the Rhino while it was mid-turning. Somehow instinctively I knew surviving this jump was a walk in the park, so I took the leap. While mid-air, rapid thoughts went through my mind. What the fuck am I doing? Looking at the Rhino speeding away from me, an inner understanding surfaced. I have made my choice. If a fatal miscalculation was made here, I just wish no harm would come to my companions. After so many years of living on Earth and even after becoming a jaded dude, deep inside I was still but a naive person wanting a happy ending for all. Note to self, you are still such a damn noob. I landed forward, sword in hand, did a small somersault roll and just ended up continuing walking as if it was the most natural thing to do after jumping off from a speeding vehicle, but I got mud and water all over my clothes and hair now. The rain seemed to get heavier. I raised my halo and pointed the nameless sword at the approaching demon and waited. Come at me. The sword seemed to agree, and its plume of blue flame got brighter in response. It was then Cryptorer's skull probe joined me in the rain. My princess, what are you doing? He sounded frantic enough it almost gave his flat tone a hint of emotion. Betting on a hunch from the readings, I answered while resending the target priority call on all open channels again through the skull probe. This is no time for heroic nonsense. I beg of you, please evacuate from the field immediately. You know as well as I do if that Thunderhawk meant us to harm, there is no way to evade it. So I am leaving Kira and Alicia out of this gambit. I see what you mean, but this is still too reckless. Seeing me on the ground, the demon in the air let out what sounded like a joyous roar. It then held its axe high with both hands and started dropping straight at me. Even with thought acceleration, it was becoming hard to track its motion as it dove at me with what would be an unstoppable attack. I winced and started really praying to the Emperor for the first time. Please, Big E, I am begging you, let my hunch be correct. Then to my surprise, the nameless sword suddenly glowed brighter than ever before and I felt immense powers surging through my body. This is do or die. Every fiber of my being told me I was in mortal danger and something was charging up in me. This felt familiar. I had experienced this before when Fulton was about to smite me, but this time it was I who was gathering all my powers. Time slowed. My thought acceleration seemed to benefit from my charged up state, but all I can see was the massive warp spawn with its reality distortion field bearing down on me in the rain with absolute detail. My body became hot, then cold as all the energy gathered on my left hand. Time slowed further as instinct compelled me to raise my left palm towards the approaching demon. Be gone. A blinding golden lighting burst off my palm, the intensity of unleashing the power numbing my entire arm. I watched dumbfounded as the lighting struck the demon squarely on its chest, and a satisfying psychic feedback told me something cracked. This is working. My joy lasted for a split second. The massive warp spawn continued unimpeded. I watched in despair as the demon became a blur of motion, bringing its axe down. At the same time, a mental warning notified the Thunderhawk's turbo laser range had reached me. I let out a soundless scream and closed my eyes. My world became silent and pure white. Chapter 34 Final Beatdown. Am I dead? In a soundless world, my vision slowly returned and I felt the rain hitting me again. There was something in front of me, something huge. Squinting, the object came into focus. It was an axe, the colossal axe of the demon, and it was sticking up from the ground just a few feet away from me. Being this close, I could tell the weapon was easily more than twice my height. The demon was a much further distance away in a freshly made crater, looking worse for wear and struggling to stand up with movements suggesting confusion. That impact from the turbo laser at this range felt like having a sun thrown to my face. Unfortunately, not even that level of firepower with whatever I had done could kill it. Just as the demon was about to get its bearings again, it was hit by an ungodly amount of very accurate heavy bolter fire and a myriad of other weapons. I turned around just to witness the massive gunship swooping in as it continued to hammer on the fallen demon. My hearing still had yet to return, but I could feel the vibrations the gunship created in the air with its firepower. The iconic Space Marine gunship was so close to me. In a daze, I reached out. Accessing. 1. Responding machine spirit within the vicinity. Connect? Yes/no. Yes. Connection established. ++. Accessing machine spirit via Ethernet link ++. Authority confirmed and accepted. We are ready to serve. ++E. Identify yourself. This is Adeptus Astartes Thunderhawk gunship Shadow Talon, #machine ID. Ave Imperator. We await your connection timeout. ++it. Connection timeout. ++it. Did someone sever the link? The Thunderhawk flew over me. Its titanic hull shielded me from the rain for a second, and I sensed some peculiar presence inside it. It then proceeded to fly over the demon, and then a huge amount of explosions detonated in the crater. Cluster bombing run. Theory confirmed. Twice it had the chance to attack me, but it did not. I was not their target. But the Thunderhawk was now definitely the target of all the aircraft and anti-air assets on this battlefield. I watched in amazement as a swarm of aircraft, including Flame Raven, appeared from all over the battlefield, chasing after the Thunderhawk as it hightailed it out of the fight after delivering its unsolicited attack run on the demon. Just then another ping got my attention. The special weapon delivery was finally here, carried over by a Stratoraptor with perfect timing. I dove into the network, took over the trigger control of the weapon, and fired it at the dazed demon. It was like shooting a fish in a barrel as the special missile made a direct hit, creating a bubble of space-time anomaly around the demon. The Caliban Special was a stasis bomb, one of the more exotic weapons available in the Grimdark universe, effectively trapping its target in a bubble of perpetuity for a short amount of time. It was one of the very rare weapons Cryptor had in his stash of secrets. The demon was now stuck in a stasis bubble. Inside, the affected area, time basically just froze. Due to the arcane nature of the weapon, no one could tell how long the effect will last, but I fully intend to exploit this period. Crypto, we have it pinned. Understood. I will be directing all available firepower to bear while broadcasting its location to all the channels. We had but a few minutes at most. Please create more distance between yourself and the impact site, and kindly refrain from any further reckless actions in the future. It was then my hearing finally returned, and I was aware of a rhino tank pulled over beside me. Alicia climbed out from the cupola, jumped down from the tank, and started walking over with Kira. The sister appeared none too pleased with my plot of ditching them. I took a closer look at Alicia. The probationary Palatine had a sour expression between pouting and crying. It felt like she really wanted to scold me, but held me in too high regard to do so. There was one way to defuse this weird tension. I stabbed the nameless sword to the ground, walked over and hugged her while apologizing. I am sorry. She was surprised by my embrace and apology. Her power armor was cold to the touch, but it still felt good after all those close calls. The reality of death just passed over by a hair's breadth hit me like a truck as I buried my head into her chest. This feeling of relief was overwhelming. Then an awkward realization hit me. What I was doing now might have been the dream of many hobbyists in my past life. Why did you do that, and how did you know? Alicia finally asked while starting to brush off the mud from my hair. The Thunderhawk's angle of attack was constantly shifting towards the demon, but I was not certain it would work out. The probability checks out. Lady SYRINE had a better chance of surviving a turbo laser impact with her reinforced energy protection field in the open. Being inside an armored transport would bring complications into the equation if that weapon was indeed directed at her. Quoted Kira without missing a beat, however, that will make little difference as you will still be unlikely to survive hand-to-hand combat with that warp spawn. There is one key difference, I answered. You two will still be alive. Both Alicia and Kira looked stunned by my response. Just then the army started firing into the stasis bubble, signaling time to create some real distance between us and the incoming hell. Let's get out of here. After collecting my sword, We boarded the Rhino again and drove away from the demon. We watched the hectic firepower intensify from a safe distance. Soon an endless amount of projectiles were flying into that mess. Eventually, even Cathalina's Baneblade, Terminus Pride, had joined the fray, firing all its guns one after another into the bubble. Some long-range artillery rounds had even made it, landing round after round into the bubble. In the finale, a formation of Sororita's Exorcist tanks arrived and added a barrage of missiles into the mix. I also noticed a decorated Sororita's Rhino peeling off from the main battle group and heading right toward us. I recognized it to be Daidaina's command Rhino. The precious few minutes stretched on, and the frenzy firing of the Imperials piled on. Finally, we received a warning from Crypterer to all open channels. Stasis bubble collapse imminent. Stand by for impact. Just as he finished speaking, there was a bright flash and a cataclysmic level explosion as time resumed within that bubble of space with all the projectiles inside. We watched in awe as a mushroom cloud rose from the impact site and the shockwave hit our Rhino, its hull creaking in protest. The sound was deafening even after we put our hands up to cover our ears. Nothing in this universe should be able to survive that. I was confident of that notion and raised my head above the opened hatch to inspect the impact site. Visually, nothing could be seen as it was a world of dust, so I sent out Auspex to check. I froze. It was still there. It felt severely weakened than before, but was definitely still there. Plus Lady SYRINE. Plus. I almost screamed out loud with the sudden noise in my head before recognizing it was a psychic message from Fulton, one of Thabris' Psyker retinue. Plus Fulti? Be warned, the demon is still here. Plus we know. The Inquisitor had ordered the troops to stay away until this was resolved. We are approaching your position. Please stand by. Plus. From the darkening sky, a new flyer appeared and swiftly approached. It looked like a modified Corvus Blackstar strike craft, sleek and modern, looking unlike most of its boxy Imperial counterparts. Psychic resonance confirmed Fulton and Salih were on board. By then, Daidaina's Rhino finally reached us just as the Blackstar strike craft had gotten close enough. I linked up with its machine spirit, and the rest of its passengers became known to me. Neandra and Thabris were on the strike craft too. As befitting of an Inquisitor knowing the risks involved, Thabris was wise not to be on board the Flame Raven when it did the attack run. The Blackstar landed with a huge downdraft, blowing rain and muddy water everywhere. Shortly after, four people exited it with the Inquisitor leading from the front, striding purposefully. Matching his timing, Daidaina exited from her Rhino together with Markila, Verita, and Welmina. Closer to us, the sisters reached first with the Canoness leading in the front. Daidaina's expression softened as she saw me. She bowed deeply together with the other sisters before saying, "Holy daughter, everything went better than expected with just some minor deviations from your plan." I was overjoyed but was in no way about to hog all that glory. Daidaina, you and the others had done really great work out there in the field. Now we just have to tie up this last loose end. Thabris and his group stopped in front of the gathering. The Inquisitor's expression was as indecipherable as ever, but I did detect his awe when he saw the flaming nameless sword for the first time in my hand, followed by a hint of amusement, probably due to my current messy state. "Well, you are in a surprisingly excellent state considering you just took down a greater demon," he commented. I scoffed jokingly before replying, "First, the combined effort of the army took it down, not me. Second, the damn thing is still there. Any idea how to finish it off for good? Can we ask the army to continue blasting it from a distance? Considering all that firepower just now, I doubt that will work." My investigations on the Chaos cult responsible for this treacherous act revealed they had used an ancient artifact in this scheme. This warp spawn appeared to have tethered itself to the physical world through its connection with said artifact. We might need a direct psychic attack with a force weapon to sever its final attachment to this universe. Force weapon? Where can? I instinctively looked down at the flaming sword in my hand. This counts as one, right? Just when I was wondering if I actually needed to go into that mess and stab the demon myself, Thabris spoke again. "You have done more than enough. Let us handle the final." But before he could finish his statement, a blood-curdling roar came from behind us. We all turned to witness an unbelievable scene. About 100 yards away, something huge and grotesque appeared from the wall of smoke and dust. A towering, bloodied mess of skinless flesh and muscle stumbled with great difficulty towards us. Where its head was supposed to be was mangled protrusions of organs, and something that looked like a deformed eyeball was hanging out from that mess. For a very brief moment, our eyes met, and it recognized me. "Kill you," it said to me without words, taking a few steps forward and then collapsed to the ground in a cloud of dust. The whole Imperial gang went silent upon seeing what just happened. Then it felt as though the very air itself suddenly changed. This dreaded feeling, the immaterium is coming over? Goosebumps were appearing all over my body and my instinct was screaming imminent danger. The demon is thinning the barrier of reality. Salih was the first to realize what was happening. How? Why? Thabris demanded. Apparently he was also caught by surprise by this sudden development. I don't get it, but the demon seems to be burning itself up to use the artifact's power. Fulton answered as the situation suddenly became very desperate. Get behind us. Fulton shouted as he started working with Salih. Holding hands, their power fused and a protective psychic field was deployed. Everyone got into it as things literally went to hell around us. Outside the psychic field, impossible colors and weird sceneries appeared as reality started to slip away. Plus this is bad. Plus Salih cried out through psychic communication. Plus damnation. The barrier won't hold for long. Plus Fulton agreed. Plus what is the name of this psychic power? Plus I asked in amazement. Plus sanctuary. Plus. Our little sanctuary barrier was not looking well though. It seemed to be cracking from immense pressure. I had seen the psychic duo working together multiple times now and had a rough idea of how to contribute. Plus let me join your psychic choir. Plus Salih hesitated. Plus do it. We will be dead at this rate anyway. Plus Fulton communicated through gritted teeth. Markila. I passed my sword to the sister. Even while in a daze, the Celestian Superior accepted the weapon naturally. I then put one hand on the shoulders of each psyker from behind, sensing the rapid circulation of power between them. This is just like the circulation I had with the sword. Plus here it goes. Plus I started pumping my psychic energy into the circulation with the duo, slowly at first then increasing in intensity as our powers started to blend together. Faster and faster our circulation went as the two psychers continued to channel powers into the field with my backing. Plus so much power, plus Salih gasped. Plus concentrate and stabilize the field. Plus Fulton commanded. So we pushed further until the sanctuary field stabilized. It is working. We are keeping the immaterium at bay for now. Fulton announced, puffing. Can we move away from here? Thabris asked the obvious question. Negative, we can't move while channeling this protective field. Are we totally cut off from the outside? I asked while trying to communicate with Cryptor via his skull probe, but received no reply. There might be literally a universe between us and our old reality. Thabris answered grimly. So what do we do now? Diadina asked. As the others started a discussion, I found myself spacing out and my attention shifted to where the demon was outside the field. I had another hunch, a really bad one. Recalling the brief moment when I looked into the broken eyes of the greater demon, it must have assessed me with its twisted intelligence and took into account what it had witnessed. This is a trap made for me, isn't it? In a trance-like state, I slowly walked to the edge of the field. Compelled by a knowing feeling, I held my hand out and pushed my finger towards the outside. Just as my finger crossed over the field slightly, a communication came through. Fight me. An inhuman voice sounded in my head, sending frightening chills down my spine as it continued to speak. Fight me, daughter of anathema. In a daze, I found myself being pulled back from behind with a hand choking on my neck and cold steel pressed against the side of my head. It was Neandra. What are you doing? Neandra, Alicia, and Dinah all asked at the same time, and I heard the sound of weapons being raised further behind. Release Lady SYRINE, or I will shoot, added Kira with the sound of her galvanic rifle being loaded up. It seemed like my action just now was about to start an internal dispute. Stop it. All of you. I said calmly and felt the grip on my neck loosen slightly, so I continued. This is a trap for me. The demon wants to fight me. I heard its calling. What in the... Why? Thabris asked. I don't understand either. With the low level of casualties we achieved, nothing of this level of threat should have come through via that ritual. It almost felt like it had a personal grudge with me. I replied. No one had anything further to add to that statement, so it was time to defuse this situation. Mustering as much authority as possible, I demanded, unhand me, Neandra. Neandra hesitated until Thabris weighed in. Do as she says. If she was possessed, we would all be dead by now. The assassin complied. I turned around to have a look at the gathering. It had been a long day, and everybody was looking under the weather. Verita and Wellmana were looking especially pale. Seems like I will need to fight and banish the demon myself. Destroying the artifact or hitting the demon with a force weapon will cut off his attachment to our world and end this phenomenon, correct? That should be the case. Thabris nodded. I pointed at the nameless sword. Is that a force weapon? Celie winced at my question. Like just now with its blue psychic flame? Definitely. Good. I had to be sure. We will accompany you, Diadina said. No, it is almost pure immaterium outside this field, and probably only I have the Emperor's true blessings to stave off its corruptive effect. I replied. In truth, that statement was a mix of half-truths and guesses, but I doubt the rest could help much in the upcoming duel, without even taking into account the risks of being possessed or being mutated to death. My companion sprouting tentacles and attacking from behind was the last thing I want to see while in a boss fight, and a sight like that would probably break me. But this is so dangerous, Markila wanted to argue. The demon is severely weakened. It can be done, I declared while stretching out my hand to the Celestian Superior. She hesitated for a second, saw Diadina nodding before handing the nameless sword back to me reverently and delivering her blessings. May the Emperor grant you strength. I nodded, taking back my sword and triggering its flames. I then walked to the edge of the field. Outside this barrier was chaos itself. This is it. The last deciding fight for this war. I took a deep breath and turned my head around. Like a gathering of really expensive-looking cosplayers, the whole group was looking at me silently. See you all later. The Emperor protects. I forced a smile, tuned my halo to the maximum level, and then stepped forward into the unreality. Outside, the first thing I did was to nervously observe myself, looking for any signs of troubles and actively checking my own status. So far, everything seemed fine. Looking closer, I found my halo seemed to be creating its own sanctuary field effect around me, constantly repelling the immaterium. The outside was an eerie world. The aftermath of close to a whole army's worth of weapons discharge mixed with the immaterium had made a real mess of the field. Dust, hot steam, and smoke were everywhere. Visibility was practically zero with only the light provided by my halo illuminating the path forward. I approached the position of the downed greater demon cautiously, spamming Auspex to constantly confirm its exact location. The readings were weird. It felt like the demon's very existence was hanging by a thread, a burning will that stubbornly refused to leave. Thinking about the current situation, some facts were dawning on me. A powerful demonic entity thinning down the barrier of reality to bring a world into the immaterium was the standard endgame for a demonic invasion. But that was usually done after the chaos forces had gathered enough power and souls to pull a whole world through. This demon doing this now, while it was severely wounded, served no other purpose than to force my hand. So this is definitely a trap for me. I shook my head to regain focus. Nothing matters now but to banish the demon and call it a day. I continued to spam Auspex forward. It was still not moving, but the ominous feeling was intensifying. Finally, I reached a clearing and saw my target. There in the distance was the injured demon. It was still a bloodied mess and appeared to be motionless. I continued to approach until instincts told me to stop. Looking closer, and with my Auspex readings, I saw a disc-like object inside the body of the demon. My psychic sense indicated weird energies were emanating from said object with the demon's essence intertwined with it. This must be the artifact Fabris had mentioned. Now I just need to hit it with my sword. The demon remained curiously motionless. No taunting nor further communication was coming forth. This last boss fight was looking more like a puzzle than an actual fight. So, how? Fatigue was setting in. This need to end fast. I then remembered my pillow throwing way back in the bedroom. Despite being not aerodynamic at all, I still managed to fling the sleeping aid with a respectable speed. That meant the nameless sword could probably be launched like a spear. That way there was no need to get any closer to the demon. Only one shot at this. Too bad I could not practice. Wait. I can do simulations. Simulatio activated. In my mind's eye, I threw the sword again and again at the artifact inside the demon. After a few tries, the process was refined to a certainty, hitting my target again and again without fail. Finally, I was ready. The blue psychic flame on my sword was raging now as if begging to be unleashed. Let's do this. I pulled back my body, poured my remaining powers into the nameless sword and threw it like a javelin. Go back to hell. Just like the simulations, the sword left my hand and flew straight at my target like a bolt of vengeful lightning. Then I felt it. Somehow, my senses detected the demon smirking, its smug emotion apparent, and its malice laid bare. Screaming alarms went off in my mind. Something appeared in my senses and came at me with supernatural speed, but my body was still stuck in the after pose of throwing out my sword. Time slowed further, and I finally saw what was coming at me. It was a whip, a barbed whip thicker than my arms. Even in my thought-accelerated state, I could not dodge but watched in horror and slow motion as the thing approached. My senses registered the nameless sword hitting its mark just as the whip reached me. Now I really fucked up. Zhhham. There was a thunderous sound and a brilliant flash. The next thing I knew, my body was flying backwards in midair, rain hitting my face. Rain. Reality had returned and a cold realization surfaced. I got hit, and the reinforced energy field of my rosette must have activated. A lot of thoughts quickly went through my head. First off, I was angry at myself for being careless. A whip was part of the default war gear for a typical bloodthirster, and while this opponent was anything but typical, I should have anticipated that. Then my attention went at calculating my odds of survival. This energy field of mine should be similar if not superior to the protection granted by the Iron Halo equipped by Space Marine commanders. So a minimum of 4++, if not 3++, invulnerable saves? I should be able to survive this. Wait, this is not a game. My thought acceleration ended, and in a flash, as I came crashing back to Earth, the great momentum had me skipping across the muddy ground for a great distance before finally stopping. In a state of shock, I tried to get up but only managed to raise myself slightly while getting relentlessly pummeled by the rain. I am in such a mess now. What about the demon? I shivered, pushed myself, and managed to send out another wave of Auspex to its last known location. Nothing, it was finally banished for real. Looking down at myself to assess my situation, I found all my limbs were intact, but there was this curious feeling of numbness on my chest. Panicking, I tried to sit up again but choked on my throat and proceeded to vomit out blood. Streams of hot blood were dripping down freely from my mouth and nose. Oh, this does not look good. I couldn't even get myself to sit upright. This transhuman body, a supposed peak-level creation of a galactic empire, could not even perform such a basic action now. I need help. In a blind panic, I reached out psychically and to my great relief, managed to grab hold of a pair of familiar consciousness nearby. Plus help, plus Lady SYRINE, plus they both replied. Plus Fulti, Sali. The demon is done for, but I am hurt. Need assistance. Plus acknowledged. We are coming over. Plus. Suddenly new sensations started creeping onto my body. Ouch, pain. Wait, ain't I supposed to have a grace period for the adrenaline to suppress such sensations before the pain kicks in? Plus please hurry, I am in a pretty bad state. Plus. Without warning, the pains intensified by folds. I wanted to scream, but messages of Regulus were popping up again, and my throat felt like it was filled with blood. Laying flat on my back on top of the cold, wet, muddy ground, I saw nothing but a raining dark and dirty purple sky. The psychic duo was still responding, but I could no longer hear what they were saying. I drowned in a sea of pain. Everything faded to darkness. Chapter 35 Aftermath. The light rain was still drizzling during the night when an Aquila lander touched down at the primary landing pad of the monastery fortress, where Cryptorecycle was already waiting with a squad of Skitarii rangers. The lone passenger stepped out of the vehicle and proceeded to greet the unmoving Dominus. The newcomer looked to be a heavily augmented tech priest, however he was dwarfed both in stature and status by the inviting host. Greetings, Archdominus Cycle. I, Mugos Balpraetus Aukank, arrived as summoned. Glory to the Omnisia, your swift campaign of subjugating the rebels was glorious and indeed blessed by the machine god. If his will be done, let it be done quickly. The short campaign was indeed blessed. Unfortunately, there was a complication. Mugos Balpraetus, your talent is needed. Follow me. They started walking, leaving the escorting rangers as they went through multiple security checkpoints together. Balpraetus observed the curious mix of Mechanicus and Sororita's personnel around. As they got into a lift and started descending, his curiosity finally got the better of him. Dominus, may I inquire what are we doing in the Sororita's monastery, and which exact field of expertise do you require from me? Specifically, we need advice from an expert on transhumanism, and you are the best Mugos biologist on the planet. We are here because of a very important patient. Patient? Yes, patient. Ask no more. All will be revealed. The lift reached its designated floor and the door opened. They were greeted by more security elements, but with Cryptora leading, none dared to bar the duo. Eventually, they reached a huge blast door manned by more guards. To Balpraetus' surprise, an inquisitor was also waiting with his retinue. One of the retinue, a psyker by his appearance, stepped forward and lightly probed the Mugos. Satisfied with the result, the psyker nodded to the inquisitor and stepped back. It was after that the trench coat-wearing inquisitor acknowledged Balpraetus. Well met, Mugos. Stringent security is required with what is at stake. I am Inquisitor Thabris Thorn of the Ordo Hereticus. You will be given access to information classified under Vermilion-level Imperial clearance. Leaking any information on what we are about to show you will render yourself an immediate enemy of the Imperium. This warning will not be repeated. Before Balpraetus could even organize his thoughts, they went through the blast door. Inside was a medical operation theater of sorts, with an assortment of advanced equipment. At the center of it all was a bed swarmed by a myriad of personnel tending to an unconscious form of a female human with an oxygen mask on her face. That is the patient. Yes, transferring her medical records to you now. Balpraetus checked the datasheet he received and started analyzing it while they walked. When the augmentation column was read, the shock he experienced almost tripped him over. Written in bold letters on the said column was but 2 words, Primarch Minoris. Dominus. This specification is no mistake. Confirmed. The patient herself disclosed that detail to an aide, and that record was triple-checked. You can double-check her physiology on that point yourself. With a quivering mind, Balpraetus quickly went through the rest of the datasheet and realized the reason he was summoned. It appeared the patient had received critical injuries, multiple internal hemorrhaging and organ inflammations were detected. But no one knew how to proceed with the treatment process since the patient's transhumanism was so advanced she was practically another species. Do you understand now? I understand. Please allow me to access all detailed medical readings and records. Sometime later, Balpraetus had gone through all the data and had a hunch on what was going on. Dominus, I have reached an unlikely hypothesis on how to improve the patient's condition. Cryptor seemed pleased. Speak plainly, Muggos. We are out of tangible options. None here knew how to deal with an injured Primarch, full-scale or otherwise. Balpraetus nodded and continued. Assuming the patient is truly in existence close to a Primarch, she should have an innate regenerative capability far superior to any standard Astartes. While the internal injuries she suffered were significant, they should not have been able to overwhelm her regenerative tendency. Then why is her condition not improving? From the records, or the lack thereof, I believe the patient was going without nutrient intake for an extended period of time. As unbelievable as it seems, my hypothesis is she might just be deprived of essential nutrients for the massive amount of energy needed to fuel proper regeneration. Cryptor went silent upon hearing the ridiculous yet plausible notion. It was around this time a small commotion happened at the center of the medical bay. Without even looking, the Dominus knew SYRINE's condition had worsened yet again. The patient's vital signs had further degraded. Time is not with us. Muggos, how confident are you with your hypothesis? I would argue there are little better alternatives, even if bypassing all the improbabilities and you could get hold of an Astartes apothecary specializing in transhuman care right now. Ancient Imperial records have shown they were also at a loss of how to treat a seriously injured Primarch. You have a point. With me. The tech priests proceeded to the center of the medical bay where a team of elite medical personnel were helplessly monitoring the situation. No one paid any heed to the approaching duo. Cryptor stopped walking, looked around, and proceeded to clap his hands. Miraculous as it seemed, a satisfying fleshly clap resounded as his primary metallic hands hit each other as he announced loudly, "Good news, everyone." The frenzy inside the medical bay stopped abruptly, everyone froze and looked bewilderingly at the towering Dominus. Satisfied that he now commanded everyone's attention, Cryptor spoke. "I have consulted with an expert. The princess might just be too malnourished to heal herself. Please try direct nutrient injections to see if that improves her condition." Upon receiving the revelation, the medical staff hurriedly went to work. Cryptor turned to Balpraetus. "If this works, you will have my eternal gratitude and a fair share of the ventures forward. Otherwise, consider yourself downgraded to a servitor once we are done here." "That is unacceptable, Dominus. That terms and conditions never were stated beforehand," Balpraetus protested. "My needle cannot penetrate the patient's epidermis." Someone cried out. "Same here," another echoed, and the atmosphere of further desperation was setting in. "Let me do it." A sister hospitaller with an Inquisition badge stepped forward and, after a while, successfully performed the procedure. Commencing intravenous therapy now. Like a miracle and to everyone's relief, the patient's vital readings almost immediately seemed to stabilize. "How did you manage that, sister?" "You will need a medical syringe with an adamantium needle and a monomolecular tip. Standard medical equipment won't work," the sister explained to a room of astonished medical staff. "How did you know?" another senior staff member asked. "Experience. Here, please keep a few of these with you," the sister replied while distributing some of her precious medical wares. "I currently only have a limited supply of these on hand. Please do not waste them. Look." Vital signs are improving. A round of small cheers broke out, the first good news since receiving the patient. Excellent. Cryptor joined in. What is your name, sister? Verita Kern, currently attached to the Inquisition. I will commit your name to my memory, Sister Verita. You have the gratitude of Cult Mechanicus for your contribution today. The Dominus then turned to his fellow tech priest. Mugos Balpratus, your place within my holy expedition will be cemented once the omniscient princess regains her consciousness. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. I was in a void. No time, no space, no body. Just pure consciousness. Am I dead for real this time? No. Wait, who was that? It is me. Who is me? That line gets blurry, doesn't it? SYRINE, is that you? Yes, it is me, or you. It is complicated. You were inside all along? Come out and settle this mess. I can't, otherwise, I won't call for you. Huh, you saw everything? Yes. So how did I do? Impressive, much better than I ever hoped for. I have to ask, why do you need my help in the first place? That, I cannot share with you now. Why? It might break you. Say, well, what would happen if I had refused to help back then? I am curious too. Want to see? A vision appeared. We went back in time to the psychic beacon's activation. Deep in the inner sanctum back to where it all began. Unable to secure a soul link, SYRINE would fall into a deep coma when the rebels attacked. Without my intervention, Amael and Canner were doused by the flamer and proceeded to be gunned down while covered in flames. In the preceding gunfight, things got a lot more dangerous for my other associates, and Alicia lost an eye during the battle. Thabris and Cryptor would still arrive in time and clean up the fight, but they never reconciled due to the heavy losses incurred. Herlindia would take over as Thabris interrogator, but her demeanor changed completely after witnessing the charred remains of Amael. She went semi-berserk and executed some of the rebels herself. Apparently, she and the interrogator were more than just colleagues. After that mess was sorted, SYRINE would be sent to the Sororitas monastery for medical care. There they would find out about her Primarch physiology. Stricken with the grief of letting their holy daughter down, Alicia forfeited her position of probationary palatine and volunteered to become a repentia to repent her sins of failing. Meanwhile, Thabris would continue his investigations without Cryptor's aid. Running low on time and letting a vengeful Herlindia take charge of some of the investigations, he ended up ruffling some feathers amongst the loyalist forces. The massive battle broke out as before. Even without having access to SYRINE's authority, Catalina's forces aided by the Adeptus Mechanicus still managed to wrestle the advantage from the rebels by adapting a no-mercy approach. Alicia would lead one of the most crucial charges into rebels, never to be seen again. The bloodshed was horrendous. Hundreds of thousands died on both sides as a far more crude and brutal version of the trap was sprung. Fueled by the massive surge of souls of the deceased, the Chaos Cult's secret ritual successfully opened a huge portal and a massive wave of demons soon swarmed the planet. Realizing the heretics schemed too late, the surviving Imperials fought a losing war while more and more warp spawns were summoned through the portal. When the calculus concluded there was no way to hold the Grimtide anymore, Cryptor launched a desperate mission deep into the inner sanctum to retrieve the technological treasures sealed deep underneath the beacon. Even with the support of all his advanced cogitators, Cryptor could not bypass the extreme security put in place by the Emperor, and his attempt triggered multiple cataclysmic explosions on sight, obliterating half of the planet outright, and destroying the psychic beacon along with the unknown treasures stored within. In the frenzy of the world's final moments, amongst the billions of people on the planet, only a few thousand managed to escape the dying world. Thabris would return on board his inquisitorial strike cruiser, the Unrelenting Vigilance. There he would officially sign the death warrant for Nusquam and declare the Imperial world damned and lost. The final nail to the coffin was hammered in by executing Exterminatus on the broken planet. On the surface of the dying planet, a newly ascended demon prince credited with the deaths of billions rose from the hellish inferno, only to watch his new kingdom burn to cinders around him. With everything dead and gone, the surviving Imperial ships escaped into the surrounding darkness. Meanwhile, the void ships that were halfway traveling to Nusquam would arrive only to be greeted by a planetary graveyard. This region of space will probably never see the light of the Emperor ever again. I watched as everything faded to the void again, shaken and half expected the Regulus messages to appear, but everything went quiet. That did not happen. Throne damned it. You scared the hell out of me. That was extremely unpleasant to watch. You seem to be fading. You are waking up. I can only reach you in this state. Wait, don't go. I have so many questions. There is a lot I cannot share with you. At least tell me, where were you during the last 10,000 years? And whatever happened between you and the Big E? I was being sealed away most of that time. Big E? Is that a nickname of my father? I can try to show you, but it will be unpleasant. Show me. Show me. Very well. Chapter 36, New Dawn. Is this SYRINE's memory? I regained vision and my sense of having a body returned, but it was moving on its own. It was near pitch black, but my transhuman eyesight picked up the infrared light, and I moved like a ghost in a very dark and ominous tunnel leading into an eternal-looking void. While running, I managed to catch glimpses of my hands. They were delicate-looking appendages. This was definitely her memory. Suddenly, she leapt over an unseen edge in total darkness. It was so abrupt I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Cold air rushed by, and she did what seemed to be an impossible landing on another ledge with me watching it from a first-person view. This was like parkour but on steroids, added insane difficulty and triple the speed. I had a glance below, and all that my vision registered was a bottomless void. Before I could even finish my soundless scream, she did another few more inhuman leaps and landings as she kept going at it in near total darkness. This level of body control. I was stumped on what a Primarch-level body could achieve with its full potential unleashed. SYRINE continued to move forward in the darkness, and gradually, I was able to sense her thoughts. Today was the important day when she could finally talk with her creator again. She had made that resolve. Only one thing was in her mind. Its intensity was seared into me even in this memory of a vision. Father. The little Primarch Minoris was holding that thought while she marched ever forward into the darkness. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Wellmana bolted up from her bed with a muffled scream. The immediate sensation she felt was the unbearable chill biting into her skin. In the delirium of her half-awakened state, she struggled to recall if the temperature control of her room had been tampered with. The scholar took in a few quick breaths before realizing the reason for the plummeting warmth. Her room had stayed the same, but she was drenched in sweat and her nightgown was soaked through. She uttered some silent prayers, took in a few more deep breaths to control her ragged breathing before dragging herself to the water closet. Feeling better after dousing her face with cold water, Wellmana slowly raised her head and had a proper look at the mirror. A horrible visage of her own reflection stared back, and the first thing she noticed was that her eyes were all red. The last time Wellmana remembered seeing her eyes in the shade of red was after she bawled her eyes out as a result of receiving harsh disciplinary action from a sister superior. She was still a novitiate then, and had did something stupid. That was more than a decade ago. For a few days now, whenever Wellmana closed her eyes, a series of tormenting images kept appearing before her. That day, in the aftermath of a duel not meant for mortal eyes, their once vibrant holy daughter was found in a nightmarish landscape covered in mud, looking lifeless with dried blood all over her face. Verita and the others had sprung into action. After determining SYRINE was just barely alive, there was this mad scramble of all available resources to send her to the closest complete medical bay located at the Sororita's Fortress Monastery. Wellmana, being neither a hospitaler nor having any useful skill to contribute at that time, could only watch helplessly from the sideline. She had felt nothing but numbness at those crucial moments. Now, the scholar felt as if that indescribable feeling of helplessness together with the unforgettable scenes had been seared into her soul, slowly eating her from the inside out. As a dialogous scholar attached to the Order of the Shining Beacon, Wellmana had dreamed of meeting the Holy Daughter ever since she was introduced to the prophecy. 1,000 years had passed since the prophecy was first mentioned. Countless dialogous sisters had gone before her waiting for such a privilege, and the truth was Wellmana had never expected it was during her time that it became true. For a brief moment in time, Wellmana had the mental image of a future where she would quietly grow old, raising the next generation of Adeptus scholars and passing the prophecy down to them. Admittedly, that mirage of a quiet life was shattered as one dramatic event unfolded one after another, and things went downhill pretty fast from there. First, her mentor had suddenly passed away in her prime, leaving Wellmana as the de facto scholar in charge of handling their order's records regarding the prophecy despite her junior position. Then the Civil War broke out, throwing her relatively stable universe into a world of disarray. As the junior scholar was learning to navigate this new world of uncertainties, out of the blue the canoness had ordered her to accompany the newly promoted probationary Palatine Alicia to verify her claim of a newly surfaced candidate for the prophesied Holy Daughter. Wellmana was skeptical at first since the Alicia she personally knew could be such a hothead at times, and it was not the first time the Order had dealt with such possibilities only to be proven false later. While on their way to the fortress, Alicia shared her story and it intrigued Wellmana. The candidate's tragic loss of memory during the dramatic gunfight at the inner sanctum was something Wellmana could not wrap her mind around. It felt like there was more to the story, so she waited with bated breath to meet with this mysterious figure. When Wellmana finally met SYRINE, she still could not wrap her mind around what she saw. The candidate exuded a level of presence that could only be described as saintly, but her ultra-casual demeanor towards the sisters carried none of the gravitas one would be expecting from a fabled true daughter of the Emperor. As a scholar, Wellmana had counted no less than 5 violations of basic etiquette broken by the candidate on the first time they had met. SYRINE had openly greeted Alicia cheerfully back then. It was a very basic knowledge in high society. Proper greetings should be initiated by the lower-ranking individual even in a private setting. Surely the Emperor's daughter should know better? Then the bombshell of her medical examination result hit, confirming SYRINE was no mere human but a transhuman so advanced one could not even tell by her appearance. The sister hospitaller who had accompanied them on that mission had even secretly confided with Wellmana later that she saw no signs of any post-operative marks on SYRINE, a fact which should have been impossible. Most Imperial transhumans usually underwent so many surgeries their body was usually littered with such marks. Just as they were already having a hard time keeping their jaws closed, it was further revealed SYRINE had an unknown organ inside her brain that was certified by the Inquisition record to be found only in Primarchs. Wellmana's mind had gone blank as she processed all the information that was laid before her. The fact that SYRINE had still maintained her casual stance made the scholar's reality even more jarring on that day. A sister of the mythical Primarchs, a true daughter of the Emperor of Mankind. The scholar had read all that she could about the Primarchs, barring those who were labeled heretical anyway. To Wellmana they were such aloof figures, they might as well be just pure legends than historical facts if not for the plentiful of statues around that constantly reminded them such beings once walked amongst mortals. All the Primarchs she knew were larger-than-life figures, sons of their god emperor and superhuman in more ways than one. They led legions of space marines on a galaxy-spanning crusade and brought countless worlds into the embrace of Imperium. And here was a person who could be a younger sister of the mythical Primarchs, and she was interacting with them like peers bantering in a postgraduate ceremony. Feeling totally out of her depth, the scholar reported back to Canonist Steve Dina what she saw, praying to the Emperor himself she was not making a colossal mistake. Finally, the meeting between SYRINE and the holiest relic of their order, the Nameless Sword, happened. Any lingering doubts were burned away by the pure blue flame manifesting on the sword illuminated by the golden halo of their holy daughter. Wellmana finally understood what some of the ancient legions Astartes who had amicable relation with their Primarch must have felt when they were finally united with their gene father. Their order was finally whole again, and now the true work can begin. There were still many lingering important questions, however, due to the issue of memory loss and the urgent matter of rebellion, all these were put on the back burner. It was then that Wellmana saw for the first time the true brilliance of SYRINE. Despite clearly not operating at her full capacity, the Holy Daughter quickly orchestrated cooperation between the Sororitas, the Mechanicus, and the Inquisition with an ingenious plan to deal with the uprising rebels. The sight of various imperial establishments famous for their internal squabbles coming together and working seamlessly under SYRINE's leadership for a common goal was breathtaking. The scholar was watching from the side, dazzled. Thinking back, that first direct Vox call Wellmana received from SYRINE had to be the most nerve-wracking Vox conversation she had in her life. Before Wellmana could organize her thoughts, she was back in SYRINE's room. The short time they had spent together rummaging through the collection of clothes was the most surreal event the scholar had experienced in her life. There she was, picking up an outfit for the Holy Daughter from her otherworldly collection of apparel. SYRINE was again talking to her in a way as if the lowly scholar was her peers when it was just the two of them around. Wellmana was even offered to keep an outfit as a gift. It had petrified her back then. As a scholar, the true cost of such apparel was beyond her, but she had guessed one might not even be able to acquire these with any amount of currency. Surprising Wellmana further, SYRINE had even bothered to learn the high society greetings from their world to show proper respect for the governor and her generals. The scholar found herself totally blown away by the Holy Daughter's modesty and kindness. In the dark days that followed, when it was unclear if SYRINE could recover, Wellmana found herself in a working frenzy. With the blessing from her canoness, the scholar was going around collecting every bit of information she could about SYRINE's actions during that fateful day. From the information she gathered, it was understood the combined might that had gathered under SYRINE could easily annihilate the rebels from the beginning. However, instead of taking that easy route, SYRINE had gone the extra mile, providing many chances of salvation for the misguided fools. The subsequent chaos ritual incident had only further proven SYRINE's seemingly boundless wisdom and foresight. The scholar was sure of it. In a way, Wellmana was stumped. She never would have guessed the Holy Daughter to be so humane. Being humane, it was a description so rarely used these days. Even as a scholar, she had to triple verify the proper meaning of the word. Wellmana vividly remembered what might be the last time she saw SYRINE alive and well, stepping out from a safe zone to face a greater demon alone. Watching the petite silhouette walking fearlessly into the distance, the scholar believed she caught a glimpse of what could have been a new beginning for their stagnant Imperium. With such a person gluing the different power factions of the Imperium together, maybe, just maybe, things could start to change for the better. A new dawn for their galaxy mired by the never-ending wars, new hope in a sea of endless darkness. But that glimmer of hope was fading now. It had been days now, but no information was coming forth after they had secured the heavily wounded Holy Daughter in their monastery. What if the SYRINE could not recover from her injuries? That very thought made Wellmana feel difficult to breathe. For the past few days and nights, she prayed like the fate of the world had depended on it. Oh please, our eternal undying Lord and Savior, I pray to thy grace, glorious Emperor of mankind. Please grant us strength, point us to the path, show us the light, preserve us. No, I only pray for one miracle now. Dear Lord, please save your own daughter. Suddenly a familiar buzz broke her stupor. It was her personal communication device, and Alicia was shown as the caller. At this hour? Surely it could not be. Yes, she answered with a shaking voice. Wellmana, are you alone? Alicia's anxious voice came through. The tone of her voice bodes ill news. Yes, I am alone. What happened? Sister, Alicia said, stay calm now, but I just received special permission to inform you of this. Lady SYRINE is. Wellmana felt like a lightning had struck her. For a split second it felt like an eternity before Alicia's next word came through. Missing. Wellmana? Are you there? Eh? Say again? Missing. Yes, she went missing. I was just notified that her bed was found empty. Kira is freaking out. Both the Canoness and Dominus are furious. The monastery is about to go into full alert and lockdown if we do not find her soon. I am heading there now. Just in case, do you happen to know anything about it? Don't be absurd. How can so many guards with around-the-clock security not know anything when Lady SYRINE had finally awakened and just walked away? I will take that as a negative. Alicia out. It was only after a while Wellmana realized she was hyperventilating and staring blankly at her personal device. So many questions were going through her mind, but no answer would ever come if she just stood around. Impossible as it was, a highly secured patient had gone missing under the nose of numerous guards posted by both Adeptus Sororitas and Adeptus Mechanicus after staying in a medical coma for days. Missing, that would mean SYRINE was probably up, alive, and walking about. The scholar then recalled the brief glimpse of a new world she had seen and found herself wishing fervently to never lose the chance to witness such a sight again. I will go find her myself. Her resolve made, Wellmana quickly cleaned herself up, donned her scholar uniform, and headed out just as the barest hint of sunlight broke the darkness on the horizon. It was still very dark outside, but she was determined to look for the daughter of her god emperor. Hurrying her footsteps, the scholar set off, chasing for a new dawn for the Imperium of Man. SYRINE, into the grim darkness of the far future. Finn, why wasn't I notified of this? Palatine Alicia Sabathith stiffened upon receiving a direct question from the Holy Daughter. The Palatine had personally known SYRINE for quite some time now and had never heard her sounding like this, but Alicia persisted and stood her ground. I know it is not my place to make such a request, but please, let me handle this. In the middle of the business district, a full contingent of Sororita's strike force was moving forward, but their commander was standing still, talking frantically in a Vox conversation. Alicia, I am coming to you. SYRINE still sounded courteous as ever, but it was clear no argument was to be made of this decision. Please wait, I can explain. The Palatine desperately tried to push her point across, but it was no use. SYRINE had already cut the line. A short while after that, Alicia watched in trepidation as the sky above was split open with a bright flash. A sonic boom later, a single petite figure wrapped in a fabulous white hooded cloak materialized in the midair and started dropping leg first straight from the heavens. Even at this distance, there was no mistake about it. Alicia recognized the spiritual leader of her order had arrived via teleportation. People around gasped, not knowing what to expect from this sudden development. The hooded figure continued her free fall, moments before she hit the ground, a pair of glorious, huge, angelic wings suddenly appeared on her back. The wings broke her descent, and she landed gracefully. As soon as SYRINE's feet touched the ground, a pulse of energy burst forth from her, touching everyone in the vicinity. Those familiar with this saint's embrace would know for certain the undisputed authority figure of the realm had arrived. The surroundings went quiet. A few nearby sisters were already down kneeling. SYRINE nodded in acknowledgement and started walking as her wings melted into the air. The sight of it made Alicia forget to breathe. The Holy Daughter retracted her hood, revealing a face of engineered perfection with soft golden light bursting forth from her eyes. She settled her sight on the newly promoted Palatine. "Alicia," SYRINE called out. There was a paradoxical quality about her voice. It sounded soft and barely a whisper, but was heard clearly by everyone around them. The young Palatine lost herself momentarily in the presence of a legitimate child of her god emperor. Alicia vividly recalled the first time she had met SYRINE. Back then, the prophesied Holy Daughter was brilliant enough but more mundane and approachable. That had changed. SYRINE had since risen to a new level of presence both in person and the weight she carried. It was not as if she had purposely put distance between herself and the people she knew, but none had dared to position themselves as peers with the Emperor's daughter. The Palatine found herself kneeling in the next instance without remembering doing it. She looked up and saw SYRINE looking down at her with a slightly troubled expression as she said her next words. "Rise and explain." It was only a short sentence, but the richness of her tone conveyed many emotions: the happiness of seeing a friend, a bit of worry, a tiny bit of confusion, and throne forbid, hints of slight disappointment. The very notion that she had somehow disappointed their holy daughter sent Alicia into a mental panic. Prelude. Probationary Palatine Alicia Sabathith found herself preparing to do what was previously unthinkable, guiding yet another psyker into the heart of her monastery. Desperate times had called for desperate measures. It had been a few days after the conclusion of the battle for Nusquam, and Alicia watched impassively beside Inquisitor Thabris as the gunship Flame Raven banked and turned expertly before slowly landing on the fortress monastery's primary landing pad. The powerful downward draft of the gunship caused the robes, coats, and purity seal parchments of the people waiting nearby to flutter furiously. Upon landing, a side door of the Flame Raven opened and two figures appeared. An elderly lady gingerly stepped forth, accompanied by a young boy. The pair fumbled slightly down the extended stairs to stand before their hosts. Alicia took extra note of the slightly hunched old lady who seemed way past her prime, but conceded to the fact that a psyker's capacity is not dependent on their physical ability. Appearance-wise, the lady was quite short and not much taller than the accompanying boy. She wore a standard Imperial storm coat embellished with an inquisitorial emblem. Her eyes were covered behind a pair of round shades while a tall psychic hood rose to loom over her frail features. "Master Thabris," the elderly lady began to perform a deep bow towards the trench coat-wearing Inquisitor who waited at the forefront of the group, but her action was cut short by the man himself. The usually stern Inquisitor walked over, gently helped up the bowing lady, and asked softly, "Mage, yeah, it has been a while. How are you feeling?" Surprising Alicia, Inquisitor Thabris had spoken with a tone more akin to someone meeting a senior member of the family than a master greeting his servant. "Thanks to Zaki, the worst is past. It seems like I will be sticking around to continue my service." The old lady replied with a smile while reaching towards the young boy who came with her, but as her hand touched the boy she recoiled suddenly, as if she had just grazed hot metal. "Ah, sorry, Zaki," she quickly apologized. The little boy, who was wearing a simple gray tunic, merely looked at the old lady with a blank expression and shook his head. "A pariah," Alicia noted. "I see his null powers are growing. We might need to get an inhibitor for him soon," Thabris remarked. "Come, I will get you acquainted." The Inquisitor then turned to Alicia and formally introduced the old lady, Palatine Alicia. "This is Throne Agent Yahai May as mentioned in our previous discussions. With her help, we will have a better chance on the second attempt." Alicia nodded slightly before ignoring the newcomers. Due to indoctrination, professional indifference was the greatest courtesy she could conjure for them at the moment. The Palatine then remarked to Thabris, "I pray for it to work this time too. It has been such a monumental task to have all the parties agree on the procedure in the first place." "Agreed, Palatine. We need her back as soon as possible." Thabris nodded and continued, "Agent Yahai was in a medically induced coma until recently due to all the happenings. Please see to her well-being while she is here in your care." That done, Thabris left with his party on board the Flame Raven. Some time later, in the most secured chamber within the monastery, Alicia observed the gathering of 3 psychers and noted that while they did not speak much with one another, the relaxed body language of the old lady suggested she was glad to be reunited with Fulton and Celie. They must be communicating telepathically, Alicia realized. In the aftermath of the Greater Demon's incursion, there had been a flurry of purity tests done on all the important people involved for possible warp taint. The young Palatine witnessed how the 2 psychers were worked to the bone, and even with her predisposition against witches, she felt a hint of sympathy for them. Before Alicia realized it, she and most of Inquisitor Thaber's party had become fairly acquainted during the grueling period. Turning to the heavily augmented figure standing in the middle of the chamber, Alicia asked in a vain hope for new developments. Magos, any changes? Magos Balpratis, who presided over the procedure, replied flatly, none. Despite her being in supposed perfect physical health for more than enough time, she still shows no signs of waking up. He then turned to Sister Hospitaller Verita, who was standing nearby. All key personnel are present. We are ready to begin the second attempt. Throne willing, we will have better luck this time and wake her up from the inside, Verita Kern, who was overseeing the event for the Inquisition, remarked solemnly. Moments later, Alicia observed the ongoing procedure with her arms crossed. From her point of view, all she could see was the 3 psychers gathered behind the Holy Daughter on her bed. Both Fulton and Celie had one hand each holding onto the shoulder of Yehai. The old lady was the only one who had both her hands lightly touching SYRINE's temples, and they had been at it for quite some time now. While Alicia could not see what was really going on, judging by the strained expressions of all the psychers and the perspiration gathering on their foreheads, she suspected it was not going smoothly at all. The Palatine also noted with mild discomfort as the air inside the chamber seemed to grow thicker with each passing moment. Then the uneasy silence was broken by Balpratis' unexpected announcement. The patient is exhibiting unusual brainwave patterns. Before Alicia could decide whether that was good news or bad, she noticed the psychers starting to shiver with even heavier perspiration. Is that normal? Alicia wanted to ask, but the temperature inside the chamber abruptly plummeted. Alarmed by the unexpected event, the Palatine looked to the Sister Hospitaller, who was supposedly more experienced in such procedures, and saw Verita's unconcealed surprised face, and then, bam. There was a bright flash accompanied by a shockwave, sending the psychers and medical tools flying. Verita screamed as a thin layer of frost formed instantly inside the medical bay, rapidly covering the floor and most surfaces except for SYRINE and her bed. Alicia had raised her gloved hand just in time to shield her face from the blast. With clenched teeth, she peeked into the direction of SYRINE, and to her horror witnessed a misty figure forming above the unmoving Holy Daughter. Alicia silently cursed all the people who had assured the safety of the procedure and reached for her bolt pistol, but froze as she started to recognize the solidifying figure. Wait, this couldn't be. Alicia's eyes widened and her jaw dropped. Trembling, she took a quick glance and confirmed that the pentagrammic wards that were installed inside the chamber by the Inquisition were still intact. This was no warp breach. The frozen marble rang crisply as Alicia dropped to her armored knees, and hers were not the only one as the sound of robed and armored knees falling to the floor echoed in the whole chamber. Alerted by the loud commotion, the Celestian squad guarding just outside the door stormed in with weapons raised, but upon witnessing the scene inside, the elite sisters too lowered their weapons and fell to their knees. There, above the unmoving Holy Daughter, was the translucent but unmistakably regal visage of the Emperor. The astral form of the Master of Mankind seemed to be made up of holy lights, shining with countless colors and flickering unstably before speaking in a voice that was heavy with displeasure. It was but a whisper, yet the weight behind the words boomed like thunder. Plus, your presence here is not authorized. Plus. Everyone flinched at the accusatory tone from the sovereign of their species, and in response some bowed their heads so hard they were slamming their foreheads onto the ground. Most if not all were trembling uncontrollably, Alicia included. Just as they were expecting divine retribution, the manifestation together with the sudden frost quickly dissolved into the air, leaving a chamber of bewildered Imperials. Alicia blinked, and then blinked again to confirm the phenomenon had ended. Breathing heavily, she slowly picked herself up from the floor, her sight refusing to leave the spot where he had once been. The Palatine remained stunned for a few more seconds before snapping back to her senses, and together with Verita she hurried to SYRINE, finding the Holy Daughter still unresponsive but otherwise unharmed. The Hospitaller quickly went through a series of checks on SYRINE before giving Alicia a quick nod, signaling everything was fine. Sighing with relief, Alicia asked, Magos, status of the Holy Daughter? The tech priest, who was standing utterly still during the whole event, uttered some binary before looking at his instruments, and after a while he gave a metallic reply. Her status has reverted back to pre-procedure. Are you sure? Confirmed, Palatine. Alicia took another deep breath before walking towards the psychers who were still sprawled on the floor. She reached for the man by his collar, pulling him up and finding herself practically shouting with a hoarse voice. What in the name of throne was that? Explain it to me now. The dazed psyker, blood flowing down from his nose and ears, simply held up his hands but did not reply. It was Yehai who coughed an answer on his behalf. A moment, please, sister. I can explain. After being helped up by Tsali, the aged psyker took a moment to tidy up herself and went before SYRINE. She bowed deeply and whispered for forgiveness before talking in a shaky voice. We weren't strong enough. Even with the three of us, our combined effort was like a breeze blowing at a fortress gate. We could not get in. So we changed our approach. We pushed and pushed on her mental wall until a ripple was created. Then we peeled at the highest point of that ripple with all our strength to look inside, but everything bounced back. And that created what we saw just now? Alicia pressed. Yehai nodded shakily. While SYRINE's legitimacy seemed to be proven yet again, her condition had remained the same. The bittersweet result had Alicia wanting to pull her hair off in frustration, but instead she held her hands together and whispered a prayer. By the Emperor's grace, please come back to us, Holy Daughter. Premonition. Something had arrived, something huge. An angry, twisted thing. A thing that should not have existed in this world. Its existence should not have been possible, but a price was paid. Be warned, it is here to seek you out. You, yes, you with their anathema's bloodline. Now an equal or greater price must be paid to see it gone, or this world of man will die. Again, you are its target and the key to its banishment. I regained consciousness. The first thing I heard was Verita berating someone. She was sounding like a pissed-off girlfriend on a messy breakout, but that was so contradictory to my mental image of her. Verita. I called out. My voice sounded weak, surprising even myself. I opened my eyes and was immediately blinded by the bright medical light shining down at me. It made me reflexively raise my hand to block the illuminations. Someone gasped and grabbed my hand. It was Wellmana. Verita. Lady SYRINE has woken up. Wellmana, where am I? Help me up. No, you need to stay down. She popped into my view, her face full of concerns. No, get me up. The war, what happened to the war? And the thing. A cold chill went down my spine as the premonition I felt during my delirium state surfaced. Thanks to your song, the last I heard from the front line was that the war is being wrapped up. Wellmana answered reverently. Song? I was confused. Oddly enough, the level of respect coming from her to me seemed to have gone up a notch. Why is this happening after my shameful performance of fainting on the most critical battle? Lady SYRINE. Verita came running to me as Wellmana was helping me to sit up. My lady, is it true? I have tried to verify with the quartermaster of the fortress, but is it true you have not eaten a single meal since you're staying at the fortress? Meal? I was stumped for a moment before remembering I never once felt hungry and was being swamped by the never-ending amount of meetings ever since the start of my lodging at the fortress. Now that I think about it, I hardly even drank a sip of water. No, I have not eaten anything at the fortress. Verita choked on her breath upon hearing my answer, but before she could say anything more, a skull probe that had been silently hovering nearby became active and floated in front of me. SYRINE? My princess. Are you operational? It was Crypterer. I held my hand up at Verita and then pointed at the probe that shut down her impending berating. Crypto. Sorry I fainted. What happened while I was out? I have good news and bad news. Good news first. Your plan worked. We got all 3 Bane blades and there were little casualties. The majority of the fighting had stopped and still no signs of the renegade Astartes. That concludes the good news. I gulped. Please continue. Now the bad news. Inquisitor Thorn arrived at the ritual site, finding only it in ruins with dead cultists. A high-threat level warp entity had come through, and it had already left the site. While the Inquisitor did not inform me of this, but I know he had deemed its threat level to be serious enough to order his ship to prepare for exterminatus. Wait, what? What came through? By the Inquisitor's request, I had some of my reconnaissance assets tailing it now. Sending to you field imaging now. It is heading towards the center of the battlefield as we speak. An image popped up in my vision, confirming my dread. There amongst the landscape, flying at incredible speed, was a gigantic horned humanoid entity with leathery wings, a bloodthirster, probably the angrier type. But why? Didn't we cut down the bloodshed to a very low level with the actions we had taken? And why was it in black color? A greater demon in the physical realm. Whatever it entails, I was guessing it was not as simple as shooting it down like in the video game. The very existence of this being was already defying the natural law of the universe. Crypto, how powerful is this thing? Can we send in mass soldiers and tanks to grind it down? Regarding that question, I had tried backtracking its path from the ritual site and found this. Relaying recorded pict feed to you now. Another vision popped up in my view. It seemed to be from the point of view of a skull probe. At first, I could not tell what I was seeing. It was as if my brain was refusing to acknowledge the ridiculous sight. After a short while, like a switch being turned on, I saw the vision as what it was, a scene of pure carnage, the aftermath of some uber butchery. It was a field completely stained red and black with blood. Chunks of what appeared to be human parts, broken bones and random innards could be seen littering everywhere, accompanied by a sea of burning wrecks. The level of violence needed to create this scenery was borderline satirical. Something was making a statement. From the clues gathered on site, this would be the 144th Mobile Infantry Division of the Rebel Army led by a Colonel Arnold. Cryptor continued to explain as the view on the field of carnage moved to a particular spot, focusing on a pile of splattered flesh. This appears to be the deceased colonel. The identification tag and what was left of the lower jaw is a match with the dental records. With this, we can deduce conventional troops and tactics might be totally ineffective against this warp spawn. I was speechless. My survey of the site had also uncovered another interesting fact. The warp spawn appeared to be gaining strength, as evidence suggests the level of blunt trauma force applied to the troops was steadily increasing after the initial contact from this area. Cryptor continued to explain away, but my mind was already tuning out, looking at the larger picture and its implications. This thing was gaining strength by slaughtering people. If left alone, it will just continue gathering power from all the killings. As it does so, it might even summon more of its kin to escalate the slaughtering. My mind went to the billions of people here, the psychic beacon, and the incoming ships. Suddenly, I saw nothing but a literal sea of blood. My blood ran cold. I shivered. This thing might be the end of us all. What am I supposed to do? Run away? We can still run, right? Leave this planet, leave the beacon, leave the people. Then I remembered the combined souls of all the people I saw in that sea of wishes and my pledge to the sisters. The premonition I experienced earlier came back to me like lightning. You are its target and the key to its banishment. Damn it. Throne damned it. I had made up my mind. Crypto. Yes, omniscient princess. I await your directive. Please send me the list of deployable secret weapons you are willing to depart for the final gambit of this venture. We will see if the situation is salvageable from there. It could be a hard sell, but using older toys to trade for shiny new ones should be a tempting prospect even for famous hoarders like them, and I was sure the Archdominus was keeping a few cards hidden. So I waited for the reply. Very well. And please get me a fast ride to the front line. I need to pick up my sword from Canoness D. Dinah. Understood. Finally, have as many forces as possible under your command heading to it right now. We will need all the firepower we can get to light that thing up like the Emperor's Day Parade. B2CH.1 Memory. In a world where the dark gods literally exist, are atheists the flat earthers of the Grimdark universe? Alone in the darkness, she continued to run, experiencing SYRINE's memory from a first-person view. My vision was illuminated by the barest of lights as she continued her lonesome journey through a long and dark passage. All around I saw sophisticated piping, wires and panels crawling on every wall surface available. Everything looked high-tech, yet the extreme dilapidated state of the whole place reminded me of the inside of an ancient tomb. Looking at the incongruous scene of what could only be described as a fantastic ruin, I was struck by the possibility that this place might carry more historical weight than the old wonders of the world from my time. As I pondered on these unsettling notions, SYRINE's soft footsteps continued to echo in the endless darkness, her anticipation increasing with every step. The journey through the passages eventually ended as she reached her destination, a dimly lit clearing in the middle of nowhere. Whatever they were using as illuminators had survived the ages, a testament to the level of technological sophistication achieved by the people who built this place. As SYRINE stepped into the dim light, I glimpsed down and was shocked to see a dirty rag covering her frame. Even with the limitations of a first-person view, I could tell she was clearly a child at this point in time. She looked surprisingly frail and even borderline malnourished, not in the slightest state to hint at her status of being a transhuman heiress of a galactic empire. Oblivious to my observations from the future, she continued walking, looking for a perfect spot. While the place did not look out of the ordinary, an impression from her memory informed me it was a carefully calculated location after many trials and tribulations. Eventually, she selected a spot to sit down on the cold stone floor, brushing random rocks away as she did so. Her mind was still hot with anticipation as a vivid thought imprint seeped into me. Finally, after all this time, I can talk to my father again. She soon settled down into a controlled breathing rhythm. There was a brief moment of disorientation, and I suddenly found myself looking down at a girl from a slight elevation and almost freaked out. That was until I recognized the platinum hair. SYRINE? But how? It took a moment before I realized what happened. This must be a form of astral projection. As far as I knew, a certain famous inquisitor who was bound in a life-sustaining armored chair used this technique a lot. I could not help but feel flustered again as I realized just how little I knew of her capabilities. I need to ask her for a comprehensive list when the next chance comes around. While I was making a mental note on this issue, a floating feeling took over and my view started levitating up. She was moving. As her consciousness drifted upwards, she looked up and an incredible sight came into view. For a moment, I could not comprehend what I was seeing. Above was the rapidly approaching ceiling, but beyond it with my psychic sense I could clearly see a dark void with many shining, blinking lights. In the middle of it all was a titanic, blinding ball of light. For the lack of better words, it was like looking at a very large sun in the night sky. My mind quivered at the eerie sight, but SYRINE was unperturbed and continued to climb upwards. Soon her consciousness flew into the solid-looking ceiling and passed through it like a ghost. Layers and layers of rocks, earth, and unknown material were soon whisking by, but the strange psychic sight remained in view. SYRINE continued to climb, getting closer and closer to the still distant radiance until suddenly something barred her way forward. Like hitting an invisible wall on a no-clip flight, something stopped her ascent. This seemed to be within her expectation as SYRINE showed no signs of being surprised. She looked longingly at the huge ball of light for a few seconds before going the other way, towards the other shimmering but much smaller lights on the other far end. As she moved closer towards those lights in the distance, it felt like déjà vu, as if I had seen lights like these before. Digging into my memory, a single mental image emerged. It was the astropath when I entered a psychically active state for the first time. So all these are souls of psychers? It was then that I recalled an old lore of this universe. It mentioned that powerful psychers shone like stars in the Imperium. Looking closer, those small shining lights did remind me of HIATUS, the astropath I had witnessed in my psychically active state. All those shining little lights were psychers in the distance, and they all had a different degree of brightness. Supposedly, the more powerful they were, the brighter they shone. I then looked back at the huge ball of light in the far distance and had an epiphany. That meant my mind froze as I realized what, or rather who, the titanic ball of light was all along. Dwarfing all the others by a sheer magnitude of power, glowing like a supernova in the darkness of the psychic space, could be only one person, the Emperor, the master of mankind, Big E himself. While my mind shuddered at the realization, SYRINE had finally moved close enough to the cluster of lights for me to see them properly. Men, women, and even children of all ages were clustered together, their souls flickering in the void. As SYRINE flew into the throng of glowing souls, the details of her plan seeped into me. There was a powerful barrier blocking the way forward, so she planned to go through it by attaching herself onto another mind. Looking around, she soon found a target with the correct resonance and dove into the mind of a girl. Instead of taking over, she hid herself behind the host's lethargic mind and waited. The girl whose mind SYRINE had latched on was unaware of what happened and continued on her journey. She continued to walk for a long time until she approached the barrier. Just when the girl was about to cross the barrier, SYRINE forgot herself and became Noloria Jarius, and the memories from the host started pouring over. Noloria, no, I was born on an agricultural world and lived a mundane life. One day, I started manifesting weird powers. It started as a silly thing, and the local priest took notice. Soon some powerful people arrived, and I was picked up by a ship from the sky. Little was said and nothing was explained, but I was going off-world. It was exciting yet scary at the same time. That was when the nightmare started. Everything was a blur, but I knew we traveled for a long time on board a starship. There were others who were like me on the ship, but I never saw them. Sometimes in my delirious confinement, I could hear whispers. Most were gibberish and curses. Amongst the voices there was one which kept saying we were heading towards Holy Terra, but I doubted it since the throne world was so far away, and even wealthy pilgrims were known to die while waiting for their turn to visit the birthplace of Imperium. Finally, the starship arrived at its destination. After making it to the surface of the unknown planet and participating in more tests, I and the others were moved to a featureless facility. It was huge, and we had been walking for a while now. My feet ached, my feeble limbs were shaking with exhaustion. The excitement had long since died. I was scared and wanted very much to just go home, but I no longer even remember what home looked like. Barrier passed. It worked. Awakened from my trance, I detached myself from the poor girl's mind and flew away from the throng of fledgling psychers. Ahead was the target destination just a distance away. A great mixed feeling of unease and unparalleled joy rose together on the uncertainties ahead, but I steeled my resolve and before long reached the edge of the titanic glowing globe. The sight was both breathtaking and terrifying. In front of me was a wall of psychic light pulsing with immeasurable intensity, sending otherworldly brightness into the infinite ethereal abyss. Even at this close a distance, when I tried to get hold of his consciousness, it was no use. Like so many attempts before, it felt like he was here but also everywhere at the same time. I stepped forward into the light. The depthless power in this space filled me with unease. It felt like sacrilege just to be here. I gazed into the blinding and pulsing lights and called out in point-blank range. Plus, Father. Plus. No reply, so I tried again. Plus, Father. I am here. Plus. Again, nothing happened. I was about to attempt a third time when suddenly the pulsing of light stopped for a microsecond before the space around me exploded with psychic wind. With that, an impossible voice spoke. Plus who? Plus. He responded. I shivered with joy upon recognizing the voice that reverberated from everywhere. Before I could respond further, the titanic globe of psychic light snapped into focus and glowed brighter still. It was like witnessing a sentient sun waking up. Immediately, my surroundings shook as an ultra-dense psychic pressure hit me like a truck. I was stunned by the impact and got pushed back out into the void. With some difficulties, I regained my bearings to witness an impression of a man forming at the core of the blinding radiance. I trembled with equal parts anticipation and astonishment as the visage of an impressive figure started to solidify. It was a tall, towering man encased in an impossibly imperious golden armor. Motifs of proud-looking double-headed eagles were edged all over the emerging armored form that was wreathed in a holy aura. There were impressions of long, black straight hair flowing from a head obscured in a blinding halo. I tried to make out the emerging figure's face, but could not make out any features. It was like staring into the sun. Plus, Father. Plus. The figure did not reply. Plus, Father. It is me, SYRINE. Plus. I called out again while raising my astral arm in a vain attempt to reduce the incoming pressure. An unfathomable amount of psychic power was gathering around the figure. I shuddered at the unimaginable gap between us. The sheer magnitude of power difference was like comparing a light bulb to the sun. I knew the figure was looking at me. His attention alone burned, yet that was nothing compared to what came next. With a voice like a chorus of a million people, he gazed at me without any hint of recognition while dropping a world-shattering statement in an angry tone. Plus, your presence here is not authorized. Plus. B2CH.2 Revelations. My father did not recognize me. The shocking realization plunged me from my ecstatic state about the reunion to utter horror. Up until now, to be able to talk to my father again was the only thing that had kept me going in this strange and twisted world. Plus, Father. Plus. I tried again, but in vain to get through to him. The concentration of psychic power around the golden figure had grown so dense it now caused flashes of arcane lightning to manifest. In the next instance, I felt a chill as his gaze became positively hostile. Before I could react, the pressure around me suddenly intensified, crushing my astral form. Pinned by his powers, I could not move as the suffocating pressure continued to increase until it became painful, and then the pain became molten hot. Plus, Father. Plus, I desperately cried out, but there was no reply. Just as I started to feel like being burned from the inside out, a bright beam shot out from the golden figure, and what felt like the combined brightness of 1,000 suns bore into me. I screamed soundlessly, and my lonely life flashed before my eyes. For the longest time, everything I knew was from that incubation chamber. The learning, the yearning, the waiting, and more waiting to be useful, to serve my father and his empire. And now it felt like the end. I believed this was my final moment as the torment became unbearable and felt my very essence begin to melt and disintegrate. But it is fine. Without my father's recognition, Suddenly, the intense brightness subsided and pressure disappeared. I was left floating, dazed and in excruciating agony. Forcing myself to look up, I saw the blinding figure was motionless but observing. This was reminiscent of the first time I met him. Finally, he spoke again. Plus you, number 21. Plus. 21? Unaware of my assigned number, I tried to process the revelation while wincing through the pain. He finally recognized me? Plus, I remember now. I had locked you away myself. Plus, he continued coldly. Plus, father. Plus, trembling in pain, I only managed to whimper. Plus, how are you here? Did you betray me too? Plus? Shocked by his sudden accusation of treachery, my thoughts went blank. Receiving no response, he reached out, and in the next instance I felt my mind being pried open by an overwhelming force. Another session of tormenting pain commenced as my life flashed before me again. Every thought, every emotion I ever had was laid bare before the psychic interrogation. Like an unimpressed reader flipping through a book, he saw everything. Finally, the stranglehold on my mind was released, and he spoke again. Plus 21. Experimental weapon. Abandoned project. Plus, despite being delirious from the mental torture, I flinched at the implications of his statement. Abandoned weapon? Was I just that all along? Plus, you are a weapon. A weapon for an era that never arrived. Plus, after saying those words, his gaze started to turn, fixated on something beyond the dark void surrounding us. Plus, alas, if it is any of the loyal ones from the 20, I can do a lot more. So much more. Plus, the golden figure continued to speak, but alarmingly it felt like he was just monologuing rather than talking to me. It was as though I had immediately been forgotten and ignored. I was finally reunited with my creator, but never felt so lost. Many thoughts went through my shell-shocked mind, but one thing had become apparent. He is insane. Just as a sense of suffocating numbness was taking over, I suddenly recalled the mention of others. Was he referring to my many brothers? Whatever happened to them all? Were they ever treated like this? I wanted to know. I need to know. Seeing a sliver of psychic link that was used for my interrogation still existed, even in my agonizing state, a dangerous curiosity took over. I peeked at the towering golden figure, confirmed his attention was still totally elsewhere, and decided to take a risk. Holding on to our connection, I tried to replicate what he did on the mind-reading end. The world went blinding white, then came darkness. An incredible sense of omnipotence took over as my view broadened to countless worlds and human souls. I lost myself as my consciousness was stretched thin across a colossal distance and saw everything. I saw a galaxy, his empire, the Imperium of Man. In the depthless void of space, millions of great ships traveled. Most were toiling on deliveries, but a large number were exchanging city-killing firepower against countless enemies. Enemies of different breeds that surrounded the galaxy-spanning Imperium on all sides, that threatened it from within as well as without. A sense of perpetual suffering permeated throughout the Imperium as dozens of apocalyptic wars could be felt happening this very moment. My consciousness further focused onto the scene. As I got closer, the numberless viewpoints that were too vast for my mind narrowed down. I saw thousands of worlds where humans were fighting other humans, aliens, and mutants. Countless armies were waging wars across the galaxy. Repulsed and morbidly curious in equal measures at the carnage on display, I kept getting closer until I immersed myself through the eyes of these people. I was a guardsman, frantically blasting green-skinned aliens with my squad in a trench flooded with relentless rain. The lost beams from my weapon hit their mark, but the tide of aliens still pushed through the line. A large brute climbed into the trench near me, cutting down Sergeant Thane with a brutal swing, and came at me next. I dodged its attack, but more aliens were pouring into the trench. There was no escape. I rolled on the ground and just managed to pull the pin off my grenade before receiving a slash to my face. I was a citizen caught in the crossfire between the Planetary Defense Force and an insurgency, bleeding out on the battered street of the subsector's capital city. I was a crusader, blocking incoming fire with a raised storm shield as I took my last stand in a besieged temple on a fringe world. I was a mother, holding on to my child as Drakari raiders burst through the door of my apartment, gunning down people while laughing maniacally to begin their slaughter. There were countless defeats, but also innumerable victories. I was an inquisitor, leading my retinues as I charged into the heretical mob and splitting the skull of a cult leader with my thunder hammer in a flurry of fury and lightning. I was a space marine of the White Scars chapter, riding with my brothers. My ivory-colored gauntlet turned, gunning my war bike at full throttle straight into a squad of Eldar warriors, flattening the slender aliens before they could even react. The other aliens in the Xenos warhost turned to us with weapons raised. I screamed my war cry for Jagatai Khan and the Emperor and charged. Jagatai Khan? Jagatai Khan, a Primarch, number 5, brother, missing. The answers came instantly through my connection with him. Evidence of my siblings' existence jolted my sense of self back from the abyss. Primarchs, brothers, where are they? Lost, dead, Damned. No more. Only their scions are left, the Astartes, Space Marines. Instinctively I sought them out, shifting my focus onto more Astartes, more Space Marines. Signs of Primarchs, legacy of my brothers. I was a Grey Knight of the Sixth Brotherhood, finishing off a warp monstrosity in a ruined monastery. The Nemesis Force sword in my hand swung down, beheading the defeated demon in one clean sweep. The foul-horned head rolled on the cracked marble floor, dragging a trail of ichor behind it before disintegrating near the battered body of Justicar Salas. Injured in multiple places, I knelt down and looked around, just in time to notice a pale young chapel girl peeking from behind a row of pew chairs. No witnesses allowed. I raised my storm bolter and fired. My purpose was pure, regardless of who my Gene father was. Switch. I was a shadow, a Marine of the Raven's Watch chapter. I was gifted and could hide in plain sight like my Gene father, Corvus Corax. Corvus Corax, number 19, brother, missing. Utilizing my rare gift, I simply walked into the middle of an army headquarters belonging to the enemy, yet none noticed me as I stood next to the enemy leader. I watched as the fool committed his entire army into our trap. Just as the enemy leader's confident expression turned to horror as the ambush was spraying on his troops, I slit his throat and then proceeded to massacre everyone in the room. Switch. I was wrath. Nothing but rage poured forth in my red-tinted vision. Everything was a blur as I charged forward in a battlefield of frenzied slaughter, my blood-soaked, jet-black armored hands outstretched with murderous intent to kill. To kill a lost brother. But why was my armor black instead of golden? No matter. For I, Sanguinius, Primarch of the Blood Angels, swear by our Father's name I will end you here, for you are brother of mine no more. Horus Lupercal. Sanguinius, brother number 9, deceased. Horus Lupercal, brother number 16, deceased. My brothers were killing each other. Yet confusion arose as I knew from somewhere that they were long dead. In my heavily distorted vision, like a frenzied predator, I leapt forward, ready to rip into a blurry figure when suddenly the world froze as if time had stopped. Huh? A distinct feeling of something truly massive from the beyond peeking over my shoulder took hold, and I realized what happened. He was here. Or rather, my father's attention was here. My hunch was validated in the next instance when a voice sounding like a million chorus rang out in the space. Plus number 9? 16? Plus. Hunkering down, I did not even dare to think. After a while the voice monologued again. Plus no, just echoes of shadows. 9 is no more, so is 16. 9 died a noble death in 16, oh 16. Plus I killed him. Plus, my father killed one of my brothers? The revelation almost broke my trance, but I kept at it. After a while the feeling of being spied upon disappeared. He had moved on, and time abruptly resumed like an unpaused movie. In the vision, I plunged into the previously blurred figure, ripping into the body of a panic-stricken mortal man. With brute force I grabbed the man's heart and ripped it out whole from his ribs. The sophisticated temperature sensors in my gauntlet registered the warmth of my victim's blood as the sanguine fluid poured forth like leaks from a ruptured pipe. Watching the copious amount of blood flowing, I regained mental clarity. I was no Primarch, merely a Death Company Marine of the Blood Angels who had failed in my vigil on keeping the black rage at bay. This would be my final mission. I looked at the messy flesh that was still beating in my hand, then the rage took over again. Just before the heart was crushed, I decided that I had seen enough. Conjuring all my mental might, I forcefully retracted my astral self. I knew the risk of harsh psychic feedback, and it might even trigger a barrier alarm, but I no longer cared. There was a sound of a terrible tear in the psychic space before the sense of a physical body returned. The horrible physical pain soon followed. I proceeded to cough out a huge patch of blood. The feedback was far harsher than expected. My head was spinning from the exertion. Gasping, I wondered how long I was out before deciding it didn't matter. The important thing was I needed to get away from here. Away from all this madness. Panting, I struggled to stand up. Sweat and blood were dripping down from my face as indescribable pain took over my body. Yet I had no time to dwell, as tiny trembling on the ground could be felt. Someone, or something was approaching. I looked down and to my horror noticed the mess on the floor. In desperation something took over. I pointed my open palm at the puddle of blood. Inspired by my horrible experience of almost being erased, I compressed the warp energy in my hand until a small beam of light poured forth from my palm, disintegrating every evidence of my existence. That done, I got up again and started my escape. I ran, ignoring the overwhelming aching body pain while dashing towards the designated escape route. My feet carried me over marble stone steps predating the Unification War. Everything from unknown broken statues of forgotten heroes, artifact pieces that outlasted many empires, and memorized death trap locations dashed by in a blur as I moved to avoid the tightening net of my pursuers. As I approached the final escape point, my surroundings became better lit with each passing moment. Finally, one more long and narrow passageway before my freedom was certain. It was then I felt it. Heavy footsteps coming from the far end of the passage, quite a distance away but closing in fast. The weight of the steps, this rhythm, no doubt about it, the Golden Guardians were here. The unexpected development made me tremble with fear. No patrol of Golden Guardians was supposed to be here. Did I trigger some unseen new alarms or? Knowing firsthand how sharp the Golden Guardian's senses were, I immediately turned around and used my newfound ability to burn off the scent trail around and behind me. I then looked around, desperate for a proper hiding place, but found none in the confined space. The inhumanly fast footsteps got closer. Any time now, it just needed to turn the corner to see me in plain sight. Cornered, I wished fervently to just disappear. In the last moment when it seemed all was lost, something inside me snapped, and suddenly I perceived a very thin layer of shroud had appeared from nowhere and covered me whole. Before I could figure out what just happened, huge figures were turning in from around the corner. I saw them now, golden armor glittering in the dimly lit hallway and marching in pairs. This was the first time I saw the Golden Guardians at such a short distance away, and it was scary and mesmerizing in equal measures. They were huge beings encased in master-crafted golden warplates and had a peculiar quality about the way they moved. Their every movement spoke of hyper-efficiency and precision. The crimson plumes on their high helmets fluttered with every step, bouncing in sync with the spears they carried with practiced ease. Like a tide of golden waves, the giants swiftly approached. The passage's limited width allowed only two of them to march side by side at a time. I shivered internally. Just by looking at them, I knew to engage them in combat meant certain death. There was no chance of winning even if I was not already wounded. I can't win this. As I resigned to my fate and stood still to give in, a peculiar thing happened. The giants were not slowing down. They didn't notice me? Is it because of the shroud? Snapping back to my senses, I shifted my body to face them sideways, just in time to slip between them. I watched, dumbstruck, as the rows of golden giants who were oblivious to my presence marched thunderously past me, my height barely reaching their knees. Then the last giant, who wore a great crimson cape, came along, looking like a war god. As he passed me, the fluttering fabric came within a hair's breadth from my face. I moved my head back slightly, and the giant's head seemed to turn in response to my movement. My heart stopped, but he never looked back, and soon they marched off into the distance and were gone like a passing storm. I turned to the cleared corridor, my freedom assured. The strange shroud disappeared as I started to run again. Looking back, the father I knew, the imperial truth, the golden age of humanity, the glorious enlightened empire was an eternity away now. I just wanted to get away from all this. It was then I noticed liquid streaming down my eyes. A scene appeared in my mind, where a breathtaking girl with platinum hair once told me, "I am sorry, this is the second time I cried in my life." So, this was the first time? I remembered now. I am not SYRINE. The Emperor was not my father. The Golden Guardians were the Adeptus Custodes. Their names were unknown to her at this point in time. And of course, Horus Lupercal, the 16th Primarch, the War Master, the favorite son who betrayed his father and started it all, was killed by the Emperor at the end of the Great Heresy War. I stopped running. In the vision, she detached from me and continued running forward with inhuman speed, her tiny back quivering as she melted into the distance, utterly alone in the wider world. Everything turned to black. Then my eyes in the real world snapped open.